Positive.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the Hopkinton Planning Board meeting of Monday, November 25th. And we will first start by introducing our new staff person, Stephanie Pemberton, who will be filling enormous shorthand shoes of Kobe Wallace and taking our minutes for us and supporting us in our work. And we're very pleased to have you. Welcome. I'm jumping through the administrative items a tiny bit. I wanted to make sure that we early did the planning board consultant selection. So I didn't know if you wanted to just say a few words, and
Sure.
then I wanted to say a few words.
So we underwent the process. Mary and Gary assisted in reviewing the proposals for 3 firms, and Elaine also helped, and we selected Beta again, so they're going to serve as the Planning Board and Land Use Department's consultant for the next 2-year contract. I think we were all impressed with their proposal and their past work, and I think we're going to be in good hands for the next 2 years.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate Gary and Mary stepping up and doing that review with John and Elaine. And from my perspective, I think Beta has served us extremely well. I have developed a very high level of confidence and reliance on their work, so I appreciate that they're going to be with us for the next 2 years.
Point of order, though.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. I appreciate the time you guys put into this. Planning board members being on the subcommittee in order to review the scientists that we work with, the company that we work with, and I think it's a great choice, but I think part of the process involves us voting officially for it, because we are an elected board, and the town planner, which is part of Elaine's position, works for this board, and as part of that position, a town planner, we have the ultimate say on who gets hired to work with us. Now, I noticed in your notes that you mentioned that we don't have to do that. That's your opinion. But as in our town charter, the town planner is a specific position that various versions of this board has been dealing with. How do we move forward? How do we make sense of how we make the town charter work with how our board works? And we're volunteers, and you guys that we hire are professionals. In this case, we're hiring a company with employees to work with us to do very important work for our town that I think as a board, an elected board, we have a responsibility to actually vote for in order to, A, spend the town's money, and B, rely on their expertise. It's our responsibility to vote to hire this position, this company for this position. So I would like to motion that we follow the recommendations of the subcommittee and hire, he's changed companies a couple of times, Phil Parady's company to Beta to work with our planning board as our scientist.
So, if I may, technically I'm the town planner, not Elaine. Elaine is the
Town planner, not your principal planner.
Right, there is no town planner.
I know.
So there is no town planner, effectively. I am the town planner if there was a town planner. Elaine is the assistant town manager and land use department director, and Beta is a land use department consultant that serves the planning board. So it's not only the planning board's consultant, it's the land use department. They can do work for the Concom, they can do work for the land use department in general, so like the Pratt Farm Committee. So the decision was the land use department director's decision, as they're a department consultant.
I'm going to disagree with you there. Elaine still has part of her role is town planner. Your principal planner, who does do the role of the town planner, and I'm sorry we've left this
So you know what,
dangling
Frank,
for
I'm
3
going
or
to
4
stop
boards.
you. There's all kinds of opportunity that you had to interact with me offline, personally, directly, and we could have resolved this, and you didn't take it. Stop. You've had your moment, and we're going to move forward. We accept this recommendation of the principal planner and Elaine, the assistant town manager. Okay.
Wait. But
Nope.
Is
there a second to Frank's motion? Hearing none, we move forward.
So is it my understanding that there's
Hearing none, we move
consensus?
forward. If you'd like to speak to me about it offline, we can do that.
You're chair of the planning board.
I am. Okay,
So Miriam, could
Yeah.
we review how it's worded in the town charter at
We
a
should-
future meeting?
we absolutely can. I would recommend that.
And looking down the line, final comment is, I think John will make an excellent town planner. We've had 3 principal planners come through, and he's clearly the best of the breed, so it's not anything, I'm not judging against you.
No, I'm not taking it personally.
There's specifics, rules I'm trying to follow.
Okay, next time, if there's a procedural issue, please bring it up before the meeting starts, in time to address it. Number 3, we are going to take the Buckland and Leonard Street continued public hearings. They have requested a continuance late in the game, just a few minutes ago. They have requested a continuance to December 16th without discussion. That would mean that their decisions are continued to at least a week after, December 23rd. Ho, ho, ho.
Correct.
Okay. Could I have a motion to continue that public hearing and the decisions thusly?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
One minor
Yep.
point of discussion, can we do this before 7:30? I don't know if 7:30, since we haven't actually opened.
The public
Can we vote
hearings?
to can we vote to
That's a
continue
really great point.
beforehand?
Can I just have a motion to open the public hearings?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Now I will accept the motion on continuing Buckland and Leonard Street. And Amy, are you still a second?
Second, yep.
All right, any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We have also been asked to take the approval not required plans early in the agenda, which I have no problem with, so we will entertain approval not required plan for 0 Wilson Street, the trails at Legacy Farms. Oh, yeah, I will after this, thank you.
Good evening, Roy.
Good evening.
McDowell From Legacy Farms LLC with Peter Bemis, who's the engineer that did the plan. The reason why we're changing the plan is because, as you recall, a number of months ago, we came to you with a slight reconfiguration of the units, and by doing that, that's required changing the plan. Otherwise, the property lines would be running right through the middle of houses. So the plan you have now is to conform to the plan that you approved a couple of months ago.
Which is how I understand, I can't see it, but yes, it's behind me.
It's behind you.
That's okay.
It's here.
Yeah, oh, thanks. Okay, is there any discussion? And John, your notes were pretty clear there. It doesn't seem to be any reason not to do this. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the approval not required plan. Is that what we do? Good Lord. Motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, you're all set.
Thank you. Through the chair, if I could, while I'm sitting here, could I give you a very brief update on 2 items that you have on the list that,
Nope,
No.
sorry.
do you want me to stay for that?
I do. Thank you, though.
Through the chair,
Yeah,
would you like to sign the A&R plan now or at the end?
we sure can. Do you want to do the other one first?
Perfectly fine.
All right. 9 Morse Lane. Good evening. Welcome.
Ray Capiango.
Go ahead and tell us what we're doing here for you tonight.
We came back in June to split the 9 Morse Lane up into 2 pieces, a non-buildable parcel and then the remainder to be sold.
Yep.
The house has been sold. There's a closing date, and at request of the buyers, we wanted to move the north lot line 5 feet north, just as their request. So we're back for that approval.
Does Anybody have any questions?
So could you just, for the
Yeah.
sake of clarity, could you just point out the line and?
This wasn't filed, is that right? You never did.
It's going to be filed. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So this line here
Yep.
has moved from being 26 feet, 31 feet away from the house, just in this direction. Just, there's like some trees here and it just squares off the yard for the yard.
All right, yes.
Chair, so that was the only reason for adding the 5 feet was to square off the lot?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's just because the lot, yeah,
There's like a small strip of grass in front of the yard, so it gives them the grass into the woods, and then they have the full
so
backyard
it's
area.
a nice squared area.
Thank you.
Anybody else, any questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the request.
So moved.
Is there
Second.
any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Awesome, thank you. Do you want to
I
wait
just
for
have
the...
one quick question. So with that, the 4C does get absorbed into 7 Morse Lane at some point. Does that just happen anytime down the road, or do I have to come back for that, or how does
Is
that
this a
work?
trick question?
So 4C is,
So 4C is the new piece, the non-buildable parcel. The last note on the drawing is at some point that will get absorbed in to the 7 Morse Lane, which is my lot, and it just, when do I do that?
so if they are lots held in common ownership, they're considered one for zoning. So you could file an A&R dissolving that lot line, but effectively they're one lot.
Okay.
So if you wanted to clean it up, you would just submit another A&R
Yeah, so,
dissolving
because
that lot line.
so the 4C is his, and then 7 is mine, so eventually it'll go over to me.
So when the ownership transfers over to you, it would effectively be considered one lot for zoning purposes, but to clean it up, so that you're not getting 2 tax bills and everything like that, you can submit another A&R and dissolve that line.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Good holiday.
You too, take care. You want us to sign those plans now quick?
If you guys
How
want to
many
wait,
do you
they can
need?
sign. 5.
5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh. We gotta, what, we might as well just, oh, Amy's already up, good.
So do these new iPods have a jump
Say it
button?
again?
The new iPods or iPads?
I don't have one in front of
Do
me.
they, yeah, I can't, do they have a jump button?
If it's in, if you put it in the.
Do you guys want to sign?
Can you guys sign, because you're on the other side?
There used
you
to be a
wanna
way to
sign it?
jump to
I don't mind.
further.
Us, I know, tucked in.
This trapped in here.
Okay. Okay.
That would make it better smoothly, but I deal with the time I have.
2 more people.
Is there a way to jump?
I don't know, I
to
have
page number?
to also.
Well, it'll help you.
Yes, but I don't have to.
Okay, I was just saying it would be nice.
How many more efficient?
Thanks, John, appreciate it.
Well,
No, what we-
smoothness of politics, yes.
Yeah, I don't like the inefficiency of politics. So,
I don't either, although I rely on the inefficiency.
But I have several other things,
We
I have several
all
other
do.
things I want to talk about tonight from our packet that you're not going to know about until I
Oh, okay, sorry, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
All right. How many more do you need, David?
Me, I have to be.
I need one more.
It's me, I think, because I have to be the chair. I didn't realize. Anywhere though, John?
There should be a line.
Yeah,
The
in
chair's
case.
over just on that one.
I got you, thank you, okay.
let's do a good sound for.
No, just on these iPads. There's a way to position to all the attachments. John's gonna research it, but thank you.
I can do it.
No more going.
Yeah, I know, those are great.
It's always hard to get that up before too, so. Yeah, just navigation. Thank you.
One thing I also wanted to say, and I meant to say it when we were talking about Stephanie, when I was watching the meeting, I really appreciate, Gary, that you had some great words for Kobe, but want to let whoever hasn't responded to the doodle poll remind them that we'd like to take Kobe out to dinner to thank her. It does look like Wednesday, December 11th and Wednesday, December 18th are the most popular dates so far, so I don't know if you can check now.
18th won't work for me.
Wednesday?
The 18th will not work for me, but
Okay.
the 11th does.
How about you, Dave and Frank?
You said December 18th?
11th.
Or the December 11th, yeah,
11 or 18 are the two dates.
fine with either.
Okay. How about you, Frank?
Checking. Either could be good.
So I think we lose you on the
18th would be good,
18th.
I
Sam.
responded, I can't remember what I responded to,
Yeah.
really. But yes, I
Yeah,
think the 11th is good, but not the 18th.
okay, and not the 18th for
Not the
you?
18th.
Okay. And Frank, you said either?
Either's good, yeah.
All right, so I have a proposal that we settle on the 11th. I haven't heard from Rob, obviously, and I think Deb has responded, so I think she was available that day. But I also thought it might be nice to extend an invitation to folks like John Catino and Brian Herr and Ken Wisemantel, and I did invite Fran and
John Ferrari.
John Ferrari on the doodle poll, because we had worked together on the board together.
Claire?
But Claire, yeah, whoever we could kind of think of that has had the opportunity to work for a long time with Kobe, it might be nice to just extend the invitation. So I think I'll ask, I'm going to just jot names. We said Claire, we said Ken, we said Brian, John Catino.
Ferrari.
I did invite John Ferrari. I think sadly the 11th doesn't work for him, but I will check. Who else did we?
What time were you thinking?
Does 6 o'clock work or 6:30 better, or
Yeah, I just found that.
6:30 is better.
6:30.
6:30 is better? 6:30 okay?
Yeah, because I
Okay,
have
so
something
we'll
at
say-
8:40, so that works well.
6:30 PM
Actually,
at,
6 actually works better for me on Wednesday, sorry. I'll be
Okay.
talking to Wednesdays.
I think we'll hover on 6:30, but let's see, who did I say, though? Claire, Ken, Brian, John, who else might be nice to invite that people could think of? Carol, Fran is on the doodle pool. Can you think of anybody else?
I can always email you.
Yeah, definitely email me, or invite people and just make sure we know if somebody extra is coming, because we'll just pull up another chair. So we'll need to post a meeting at TJ's for 6:30 on December 11th. Okay, so that'll be nice. Thank you, guys. Okay, on the agenda, oh, good job. Is anybody here for the hearing for Elmwood Farms? Because that hearing is also going to be continued tonight. So we might as well just take that, that action item. I will entertain a motion to continue the public hearing on Elmwood Farms 3 to December 16th. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So I don't see anybody, so that's good. Okay, the photographic log for Eversource. Do you have any more comments than were in the?
Not really. This is just something that came up from town council. They asked us what the status was, if the planning board has signed off. I think this is something that was probably sent back in like February or March and just never presented, or I don't know what happened to it, but just trying to clean up this one piece of paperwork.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the photographic log from Eversource as acceptable.
Second, move that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay. The Forestry Legacy Support Letter. Seems pretty straightforward to me. Do you have anything else to add to it?
So, just for the public in general, the Forestry Legacy Program is a program from DCR that provides funding for private landowners who own forested lands to keep their land in forest-type uses, lumber, that type of thing, or conservation, recreation, that type of thing, to preserve the forests and stop fragmenting forests in Massachusetts. And they're trying to expand the map, and Hopkinton is now included in this new expansion. So it's just a letter of support saying, yeah, we think this is a great idea. Town manager office is doing one for the town as a whole, and we're just kind of piggybacking off of that.
I'm all in. I like the idea a lot.
So just to clarify, the town has really no involvement in this. They can't apply for funding, they can't do anything like that. It's really a private landowner type thing, but I think it's in the town's interest.
And it's completely voluntary, right?
Yes,
And our having this designation would allow landowners to apply, right?
correct.
Seems like a good option.
So do we have to vote in support?
I would say vote to accept the letter that was drafted, and we can send that along.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to vote to accept the letter that was drafted.
So moved.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay. Take us quickly through board member training reimbursement, John.
So a couple months ago, we were talking about CPTC, and I mentioned that the board members were responsible for paying those fees. I was wrong. The town will reimburse fees for training. So if you have taken training or you plan on taking training, submit those receipts and you can get reimbursed. I don't think they're going to do travel, but I was wrong before, so they may do travel as well.
I've never submitted for travel. Come on, we're already donating all our time. Just throw it in. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
So we just send them to you?
We just have to,
You can send them to me and I'll try and forward them to whoever they are. It might be Elaine, to be honest.
the 2020 planning board dates, does anybody, plus Dave and I, want to take one of the August dates out?
Yes.
Which August date should we recommend removing?
Second one.
That would be my choice, too. So I have no issues with any of them, but I thought we might try and take out the 24th, just to have a little vacation-ish.
For what it's worth, I'd rather take out the first, just because it's getting close to kids back in school, so for me, I'm more likely to be here. I don't know if anybody else has any preference.
Okay.
But-
I actually am not, I mean, I have a preference for the later one, but it's not like I'm gonna.
Neither do I.
How about anybody else?
I don't have a preference.
I have no preference. I'm probably going to be missing dates in July and stuff, so.
Second is.
Okay. Thanks for being a good sport there, Gary. You're the best.
And if I may, through the chair, is the library still good for everyone? Should we try meeting here moving forward?
I like the library.
Okay.
I really appreciate no heat. I'm hoping that's going to be cool in the summer.
They do have air conditioning.
Okay.
so.
There we go. Sure is cool now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on the minutes of October 7th, 2019.
I move to accept the minutes.
Is there a second? Any discussion or corrections? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I am scattered all over this. I also wanted to say, when we were talking about Elmwood Farms, that I wanted to remind people that I have a real enthusiasm for sharing the leadership on the planning board. And if anybody wanted to take their shot at leading a hearing, that would probably be a good one to jump in on. And I am not going to be running for chair next time, so I'm hoping that people will take advantage of an opportunity to chair a few hearings. Plenty of people on this board would be amazing at the job. So let me know if anything inspires you, and I'd be happy to make sure that somebody gets the opportunity to lead one of those hearings. All right, here we go. Okay. How about the no-cut easement exception?
So the owner of the property is here if
Okay.
he wants to come up. You can just come up to the table. So just as a background for this, there's 4 trees on the property that are within a no-cut easement, and this is a little complicated because the no-cut easement was supposed to be deeded over to Halt, and it was not included in the deeds to then be deeded over to Halt. So Halt does not own or control the conservation restriction no-cut easement. So technically, since there is supposed to be a no-cut easement, the planning board still holds it. So that's why the planning board can make this decision to allow for these tree cuttings or not.
Take it away.
So basically, I'm sure the town and I want the same thing. We want,
You are, sir, I'm sorry, just for the public.
oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me better?
No, just for,
I'm Paul Houghton, 2 Cobblers Way, Hopkinton.
thank you.
So, yeah, I'm sure the town and I want the same thing. We want greenery in between my home and Front Street, and I'm sure that was the original intent of setting up that no-cut easement. There are, in fact, though, 3 trees that hover well over our home where my 2, 3, and 5-year-old daughters sleep. And the way the trees are growing, I have some visuals that kind of show it, but they're split. And white pines, as we know them, are very susceptible to breaking off once they're split. So I've had 2 arborists come out, Joe Regan being one of them and American Climbers being the other. They all advise these trees should come down sooner than later. So I guess I'm here just to get that permission from you guys to take
Is it
those
3
down.
or 4? I thought it was 4.
There's 3 trees. There's a bunch of really small dead ones already that probably have a circumference of yay much, but they're already dead. Those should just come down. And ultimately, what I want is just a healthy forest in between the road and us. And that's really it. It's pretty plain and simple.
So I haven't been out there, are you going to need to replant to do that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would do come spring is slowly introduce some more trees along the way, because, again, I do want greenery in between the road and us. I just don't want trees that could fall on my house.
Can't hate you for that, honestly. Anybody have any questions?
I was wondering if we could just put a minimum height to the trees to be replaced, working with the applicant.
So I can ask that question. So I have this feeling that we don't really have the authority to do that. We're actually deciding this because we haven't done the paperwork to turn over the conservation restriction, right?
Not us, it's the owners and the developer that were supposed to be doing that.
To Halt.
To Halt.
Okay, I didn't mean to suggest that the planning board had in any way made any mistake here. But I don't know that we have, I mean, I think that the property owner ultimately has the greatest say in what he wants to see on his front yard, or, but I don't know if there's.
I'm fine with that. Sounds
Okay.
like in his good faith that he'll plant the appropriate trees.
Yeah, I mean,
think
I'm not going to be putting a 12-footer in, but, you know, I'm going to put something that can grow nicely and not fall on the house.
And then,
Maybe this year's Christmas tree should have a roof ball.
there you go, nice. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to allow the property owner to have an exception to the no-cut easement and take down those trees that have been deemed unsafe.
So moved.
That's okay. It's not your fault.
One point of discussion, and
Yeah.
just to clarify, it's 3 trees, not 4. Is our meeting-
There are 3 large trees, and then there would be a handful of trees yay big that are already dead, but there are only 3. I can show you one here if you would like to see them.
I just want to make sure we're consistent.
Yep.
So I hear
Two-
3,
two-
and I hear a
there's-
bunch of other ones, so.
There's 2 large white pines that are alive. There's a leaning oak that's probably a circumference of about that big. And then there's probably half a dozen already dead white oaks that the bark's falling off and they're just dead.
And we don't have to get permission for the already dead ones? Is that, it's not a
So
scenic
what
road?
is the no-cut easement? Is it a certain size?
It's an area.
It's an area.
Yeah.
So it's not a certain size of tree?
I'm not aware of any kind of restriction on that.
So I think that the information that we have is 4 trees that have been deemed dead. So I don't know how to straighten this out necessarily.
Dangerous.
Dangerous. Thank you.
Why don't we just approve that? And if there's any
trees.
question about the others, they can come back.
So-
There is a
Either that
question.
Or the trees that are in the area.
They're all in the no-cut easement.
Yeah, in the no cutting zone that he needs to take down.
Yeah, I mean, what I read was if the trees are dead, there doesn't need to be any review. If they're alive, there needs to be a review.
Which makes sense.
So it would make sense. I'm not sure
you
that's a
could.
true
Just because it
statement,
would
but it would definitely make sense if it were true.
So maybe could be phrased as the live trees that are in this
The
zone.
dangerous, the
The-
3 dangerous live trees, certainly we understood that we were dealing with
Without a
those.
number, it could be cut down.
I would prefer the 3 live trees.
Me too. The 3 that are dangerous.
So I'd actually recommend, so the
What does it say?
The letter that we have from Mr. Westerling, who's our acting tree warden, specifies 4 dangerous trees.
Let to go.
So given that's what our
There
tree
was,
warden-
part of, so there was an additional white pine that I didn't originally point to as being a threat. When American Climbers came out, they said that one was near death because of how many needles it's losing already. So maybe that's the 4th tree in question.
Maybe so, but I'm inclined to follow the recommendation of our acting tree warden, which would be 4 trees, so it's, in
So
my
let's just say
opinion,
4 trees
Up to
then.
4 trees, and if you take down 3, then that's,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Through the chair, could I recommend that he present, at least to me or to the planning board, even a sketch plan just of what trees they are?
Right.
If he has one now, that'd be
Yeah,
great,
I
but
have one.
I haven't seen
Let's
one.
take a peek. What the heck? Let's just get this thing resolved.
Two copies, but here's one here, and that's the approximate locations of the 3, but the 4th one would be kind of where that arrow is. There's one behind that, of the one that was losing its needles.
Okay.
So you can see they're actually quite closer to the house than the road itself, which is why I'm concerned about them. And then there's pictures of the actual trees in there as well.
So I've lost track of the motion. Is it 4
we have a motion
trees?
in a second.
For
4
4
trees.
trees? Okay,
Up to 4 trees.
And
all right.
I'd make a discussion point.
Yep.
I'd like to specifically have 4 trees replanted in that same zone. Because you said you want the same thing the town wants, which is a little bit
I'm
of
fine
forest
with putting
between
some
Front
trees
Street.
back in there, because again, I don't want to see the traffic going by. It's just, I'm not, there's the cost of taking the trees down, got to grind the stumps. I'm not looking to put in a 12-foot tree, I guess is what I'm saying. If we can be okay with something like a 4-foot tree that grows, I'm
He's
certainly
going to stay
fine
here
with
for a
saying
while.
that.
He's got little teeny kids that
You want
gotta
the
go
same
to
thing that we
school.
want,
Yes.
which is 4 new trees to replace the trees, right?
That's fine, yeah. I'm
And
good
some
with
level of privacy between Front Street.
Exactly.
I think I've been to your home when your oldest child was a baby, so it was quite a bit ago.
Wow.
that. Well, I just moved there 6 months ago.
Oh, I'm thinking one of your neighbors then.
Yeah, probably.
Because that Cobbler's Way, the developer was supposed to have done some of these things.
And yeah, I understand there was some confusion on the fact it didn't get into the deed when I bought the house. I'm sort of just getting caught up on that myself.
Right.
But I think Brian's in the process of getting everything rectified. Brian Gassett being the builder. Brian Gassett being the builder.
Yep. Okay, all those in favor of approving the 4 trees or up to 4 trees signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thanks so much.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to all.
You too. All right. The Main Street Corridor presentation and warrant articles discussion/vote. So we don't have a format for this. I put it on the agenda in response to the Select Board's, I thought, very reasonable request for us to weigh in with a formal, either formal support or not, I suppose. And so I asked that people take advantage of the Select Board's willingness, in particular Brian Herr, but anybody in downtown, to resolve their questions or concerns, so we'd be able to do that tonight. You want to introduce yourselves, gentlemen?
David Del Toro, town engineer here.
Matt Chase with VHB, the design consultant.
Okay, so we don't have a requirement for, do we have a picture going up?
Yes, thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you. We don't have a requirement for any formal presentation, but if there's anything you wanted to say before we start talking about it, you're welcome to do that.
Other than if there's any, any questions about the project, past history, current history, any questions about a special town meeting, any questions about anything in particular of interest to the planning board in this project, that's what we're here tonight to try to.
Just as a reminder to the public, special town meeting is December 9th, and this is a question that is on the special town meeting warrant. Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments you want to shoot with? Why don't I start, since I saw a few hands, we'll start around the table. Lucky Jane.
I know there's been a lot of conversation about the two-directional bike lane, and why do we really need it, and couldn't it be on one side or the other? And I remember a meeting with VHB and DOT and finding out that we could not do the safety lights that are needed, similar to building lights, because they were so close to Wood Street by Hopkinton Lumber. It's too close. Is that factual? Is my memory correct on that?
I do remember there was a discussion about, I think that when it was one-way separated bike lane on both sides of the road is one of the iterations of the design prior to the 75% submission. I think it was even prior to one of the town meeting votes. What would happen under that scenario is if you were crossing from the north side of Main Street to the center trail, there would need to be a signal there, similar to what you said, if you go through towards Milford on 85, you have that flashing beacon, and if anybody's there, they'd hit the stoplight. And it would be an exclusive crossing, so it would be you press the button, it would stop traffic. The concern with that is, since it is so close to the Wood Street light, the impact to that, intersection, especially during peak times or anywhere close to peak times, in hopefully the future use of that trail in the bike lanes of Main Street. The intent is to really get a lot of people to use them. The impact to that intersection and the overall flow through traffic through the corridor would be significantly impacted. So I do believe the Upper Charles Committee and the Conway School kind of did look at that, and with VHB as well, to have a two-way bike lane just on the south side through the corridor. So it eliminates that flashing, that beacon there.
And with the development plan of the two-lane, single path on the south side, that actually reduced the amount of space that was needed or required, and so it opened up more area so that we could get more parking spaces along Main Street. That was helpful.
Yeah, there was some questions about, when you have a one-way separated bike lane on each side of the road, it takes up more space in the right-of-way, just the width.
So they needed 2 additional feet on either side.
Yeah.
The two
It
sides,
ends
but
up
when you
being-
combine them, it reduced it by 4 feet.
Correct. There's about 4 feet, a little more, maybe 4.5 feet less space that the two-way bike lane on the south side takes up than if you had them separated on both sides of the street. And that did help with parking and just overall geometry of the.
It did. I believe some of the results at the end of the day was that plan in and of itself opened up additional area.
Correct, yeah, and there was an iteration where there was a two-way bike lane on the south side from the trail to the 85-135, and then we had separated one-way bike lanes on north and south side from 85-135.
We went through multiple.
Right, and the signal operation at 85-135 for that,
Just made
it
it
was,
very complicated.
pretty complicated, and so having it on one side, on the south side, as a two-way bike lane also
really
helped with the
problems.
signal and design in that intersection.
I may have other questions for you.
Sure.
Process question, how many maps do we have? Do we have a few different ones, or, because this
There's
is like
five.
half the project?
5 sheets.
5, okay.
Yeah, so they can.
I think you just go page down.
Yeah, just to
This
show-
is starting at Wood Street, and then
Yeah.
it just keeps going to the east. So if you have a preference to see something,
Okay, great. Thank you. And then one point that I fully support this project, so I'm hoping that people that do have questions can feel comfortable and get the correct answers tonight.
Great, thanks, Dave.
I'd just like to add this isn't the most recent plan.
This is not?
No.
Well, there were-
It's close. There's some landscaping improvements that have been made. There was trees shown in the island there. which
in this
did-
board particular, the trees were taking out of the
Right.
island. So I think we grabbed the wrong one from the zip drive, but that's.
In general, it's 95%.
So you'll have the most up-to-date one for special town meeting, right?
We'll have it available. I mean, and again, that's a resident article, so it's more, the town will be there to respond.
So I really recommend that you,
We will have all the
your
information.
polished presentation ready to present for any questions that are offered. In deference to all the voters who will, ho, 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 be there and not Christmas shopping.
Just before I jump, just one more quick question. What you mentioned, the 3 trees in the island, why are they being removed?
Oh, I can answer that.
It was that space is a
Those
usable
came out as
space.
part of the
Historic district.
historic district
Right, it's part
meeting
of some of the
that we
historic
had
district
a month ago.
commission meetings, and in the Doughboy Island, putting trees in there
Want to change the
would
Doughboy.
impact the use during marathon.
Trees in our historic areas.
We didn't want to change the
Can I,
Doughboy.
can I respond? So we didn't want tall trees to be blocking the view of the Doughboy. We think it's a very important, iconic view or streetscape that we wanted to preserve. So we would have smaller shrubs, but not any trees. Okay.
There was input from some others. The BAA had some input, they prefer to be able to use this.
Thank you. A couple comments and a couple questions. First of all, thank you, Brian, for reaching out. Sorry we couldn't get together, but I appreciate your efforts through the years on this. And Dave, you guys have been coming before us. There's a timeline on HCAM that shows you guys are coming here on a steady basis through 2017, but all of a sudden 2018, that kind of fell off. And so we've, I think as a group, speaking for myself, fell a little bit out of the loop. So my questions come from being out of the loop as there have been changes, as this is 95% of what we're looking at. So I'm going to have questions based on, is this accurate or not? First question, my number one concern is the crosswalk across the respite center. I hear it's still going to be there, but I'm not sure.
First slide.
Can you show us on the first slide where that red line is? Is that representing the crosswalk? Yes.
Is that going to be there? Because this isn't the most up-to-date plan.
So the crosswalk for the respite center is remaining?
Yes.
Thank you. Next question. Thank you. Cedar Street, do we have one of the 4 corners?
The intersection?
Yes.
Yep, one more.
The space in front of the post office, I thought we were going to be widening Cedar Street so we could have longer 2 lanes of traffic for the right turning, the west turning lane from Cedar Street onto Main Street. And is that included or not?
I think Mac, you can.
I think you're referring to the right turn lane that's proposed on Cedar Street, and it's not going we're not extending it all the way to the post office. It transitions back by the convenience store.
Originally, that was a through right turn, I believe.
Yes.
And the town, through one of the design iterations, added an entire new right turn lane only there. In the first attempt at that, the right turn lane, I think, went to the,
A little bit to show the Main Street westbound approach as well.
yeah, just,
No, the other way. I'm sorry.
So my point
yeah,
is,
I'm
That's
gonna,
good. Yep.
but the first attempt, that right turn lane only went to the exit of the entrance of the gas station. There was another iteration where we went out and did some more survey, and it was extended all the way to where it's shown now is just in front of the, if you could pull it down a little, John, to the entrance of the, the Subway shop in the island, I guess it's a question of how far do you want this project to extend beyond Main Street? And that becomes the length of that right turning lane. And again, it's,
Well, the reason I ask is that traffic backs up all the way down to the town watershed dump, snow dump, and, which is at the bottom of the hill, which is a quarter mile or more down the hill. And it would really help improve things for the people who are turning right if they were able to use the town property that's in front of the current post office on Cedar Street, where there's an extra wide sidewalk. Is that something that we could put into the project at this point?
There are some other constraints up in that stretch that would be difficult to incorporate as part of the project from an ADA accessibility standpoint. It would impact a lot more properties to get handicap accessible ramps and
Just
things
talking
like
about one
that.
property, which is the
No, I know,
post office.
it seems that you could logically extend in one direction, but once you touch and extend the limits, you have to make sure you have ADA accessible paths for all the work that you're working in. So the limit of work that we have now, like Dave said, you have to kind of draw a line as to how far you extend on your side streets. And this improvement by adding this additional right turn lane was in response to taking out a through lane on the westbound approach on Main Street to accommodate additional parking, on-street parking. And so by doing the combination of that, this allows us to signalize the timings of the intersection so that we can help improve traffic flow on Cedar Street and Main Street and Grove Street. I think I had stated in a couple other meetings that we had with town officials that we could essentially just keep adding lanes and adding a cross-section lanes to the project, and you could be continuously adding. Go ahead.
Are you aware of how wide is the sidewalk in front of the post office?
I know it's wide. There's a couple things regarding the post office. As you start to widen the lane in front of it, if you have to take property from a post office, it's not.
I think they lease it. I think they lease it anyway.
But there's still like some federal government regulations by having the U.S. post office there, even if they're leasing.
No, I'm just saying that the sidewalk itself, part of it, the town has a right of way, that part of it's in that sidewalk. And it's just being overlooked, and I don't have a clear understanding why. Because we could have a longer passing lane,
I guess-
turning lane.
If the turning lane was all the way
At
to
this
the...
point, I've been asking for years.
So I'm
Yes,
just
when
going
the
to
plans get
make a
presented,
point that
people
we're going
ask-
to go through the chair, and we're going
Yes,
to
I'm sorry.
realize that a lot of people have a lot of input into this project, and we all win some and we lose some. Not every point carries the day.
Sure.
So
Okay.
through the chair, this is probably the fourth iteration of this design specific to that question, and specific to addressing traffic coming southbound. Extending that right turning lane to the post office. I'm not sure if, we'd have to do modeling and stuff, but there'll be, traffic will back up from that point. And then I guess ultimately from our standpoint, it's like how far, like Matt was saying, how far do you go beyond the limits of what is supposed to be Main Street project? There's cost impacts to every,
Far beyond.
well, there's lots of, and that's a project the town could address down the road as a separate, simple project. Through the chair.
My last question is about the bike lanes. State law requires every road in the state to accommodate bicycles, and that can be done in several different ways. Mostly it's done with a travel lane striped onto the road with signage reminding drivers that there are bike lanes here. Many people, the major concern that people have is the bike lanes are requiring extra space, which is requiring extra questions, where people are feeling unheard. I would like to know point blank, do we have to have the bike lanes as you've designed them, or could we have the painted striped lanes?
So through the chair, the original design for bike accommodations, and for the project, we had shared bike lanes on the street. So they were striped pretty much the same pavement as cars would be driving on. You just had to provide I think it was a 16-foot travel lane, more or less. That plan was presented to the public, several meetings, you can look at the timelines. Public input didn't like that design. Can we try other bike accommodations? MassDOT had some input into the bike accommodation designs. So we looked into, the separated bike lane, it's a newer concept, from a state design guide recommendation. Because there's bike accommodations is what's required in the project. Bike accommodations can be several different things on street. One-way separated bike lanes, we also looked at that. We designed that, we put that on the plans. The input and feedback we got from the public and from boards and committees was to try to look at another alternative, which was the two-way bike lane. We designed that, put that on the plans for half the project, went back out to the public, received feedback and comments from the public and from the boards and committees, and that led to the current bike design that was supported and voted on at town meeting. So that's kind of the history of the bike lane design. I don't know if it answers your question.
Through the chair, I understand the history of how that worked out. My question is, if this is a major sticking point for a lot of people, and if the law requires bike lanes, and we have bike lanes striped with signage, like most other towns along Route 135, some people might prefer that, and I think that the people that would prefer that are a lot of people who live and have businesses downtown, because they're the ones that are being affected the most by the project. And I think it's a fair question to ask, is it too late to redesign parts of the project that people might have, which is why I asked the earlier question. Is it too late to redesign parts of the project that people might have objections to, that haven't been heard?
So through the chair, again, I'm not sure, I don't want to
We're going to wrap it up.
argue the point with you. I'm not sure it's a state law to require it. MassDOT would allow us not to have bike lanes on this project, but then they would not fund it.
I'm not saying not have bike lanes,
I think you've asked your question very thoroughly.
but it hasn't been answered.
You may not have the answer that you
Well,
want.
No, there's no
It may
answer.
not be possible. Hold on.
I guess my last response to answer your question, that was, there's a design process for these projects in order for us to get the funding. Once you get onto the funding schedule, the project goes to a 25% design submittal, a 75% design submittal, 100%. There's certain changes you can't make after those certain submissions.
The bottom line is...
The bottom line, well, it was looked at before, and at that time of the process of this project when it was being designed, the town feedback to the design team was we don't want it that way.
Okay. We're going to keep going, Mary.
And just in reference to the bike lanes, since we've been talking about it, I personally think that the most recent design of the bike lanes is the best option. And Frank, it's not, necessarily just directly at you, but really to people who are commenting on, oh, that's not a good design. And, well, people said that at the very beginning when our town engineer has said it was originally designed with just striped areas on either side. I personally think that would be a terrible idea for a busy road, and I think that would be the worst option. The fact that we are hearing certain objections now for this design does not negate the fact that we heard objections for the earlier designs. It does not mean we're hearing more objections now, whether or not they're louder or not, but the process has been followed where input has been given all the way along the way and changes have been made to try to improve. It is not going to always satisfy everybody at 100%, and that's the fact of all designs. But I personally believe and have seen this particular design of bike lanes be very effective. Again, you mentioned that it's newer for the state of Massachusetts, but it's certainly something that is being done in Europe very, very frequently and very effectively. With, and I'm sure that, you've made the appropriate design to make it function for our environment, the snow removal and so on and so forth, which may differ in certain other areas, certainly. But I certainly think that the process has been done very well. And there's no way for engineers to change every single thing and make every single person happy at all times. I also believe that the parking has been addressed very well, and part of the parking concerns for downtown businesses in particular, not so much as residents, because I don't think that residents downtown have as much of a concern for, ample parking. But businesses, certainly, I think it's been addressed very well from the plans that I have seen. So I appreciate the efforts made in that direction. Thank you.
First, I think I can address Frank's question. And so what you're referring to are called sharrows, and that's it's a shared marking that allows bicycles to take the entire lane of traffic. It's my understanding that the state will consider those if there are no other available options. And in this situation, they've been able to accommodate bike lanes, they've been able to accommodate parking, they've been able to accommodate all those other needs. So it's my understanding that if we were to move away from bike lanes, which are achievable, and move to a sharrow type design, then we would not be eligible for any state funding. Secondly, I just want to say that I didn't expect to be talking about bike lanes a lot tonight, but as a cyclist, I've ridden over 2,000 miles this year, most of those in Hopkinton, and I am 100% supportive of this design. Most of all because I think it's an important extension of the Center Trail. It allows connectivity from East Hopkinton to West Hopkinton, and I think it will be a great asset for the town. And then third, this has been a long process. I think that the designers have done all the right things, and I just want to commend them because every single time I've had a question, they have been responsive, they've been willing to engage, they've been willing to meet, and that goes back several years. So I, like everybody, like a lot of people, I had concerns when this issue was raised, but I commend the group because they've been extraordinarily responsive in my requests for information and the questions that I've had, so thank you.
Okay. I think a lot of my questions have been asked, but I wondered if you could tell us what is the net parking space loss or gain for the whole project? I know you worked really hard to try to keep as many spots as you could.
Just 3 on Ash.
Yeah, that's the total number. 108 is the proposed number right now. I think that's compared to 111 or 112. So there was about, and that was up until about a month ago. We had about 111. It was almost a 1-for-1 up until a couple of months ago.
Do we know when the municipal lots that we voted on last town meeting will be available for people to park in? Like how many years away are we?
There was two. There was one 25, 35, and then there was one behind Town Hall. I know the one behind Town Hall, we're submitting a capital request to do the construction at this coming annual town meeting.
Okay.
The one across the street, I'm not exactly sure.
And have you thought about, has the town thought about business accommodation plans and how they're going to help businesses still, function and be a business during the construction? How they're going to communicate with businesses and the public about when certain driveways will be closed or when people have to park different places? And if you have, maybe you could bring that to town meeting?
Sure. In general, we had a utility meeting with MassDOT 2 weeks ago. This was brought up, maintaining accessibility for residents and businesses during construction. There will be a lot of communication weekly, day before with business owners and residents when MassDOT will have, they're actually thinking of maybe having 2 residents on this project. Those are the folks, the engineers who are on site daily, monitoring the contractor, they'll know what the contractor is planning to do the day before, 3 days before, a week before. They'll be communicating with those businesses and those residents on that day-to-day level. Yeah, and myself as well. Any residents have questions, they can call through Town Hall or through my office, and we'll communicate directly to the MassDOT folks, and any questions or concerns or issues will get resolved expeditiously, hopefully.
And just my final comment is that I know it's been it's a difficult process and it's been a long time, but when processes like these take so many years, it's really important to have just excellent communication and be super clear to residents when a decision is being made and when it's too late to make a major change, what can still be changed and what can't. And I'm not sure, I think we could have improved that people should have known when 25% design is done, and so that means we can't change X, and 75% design is done, and that means we can no longer change X, because I think people are feeling like they didn't know they missed certain windows of opportunity. So anyway, I know it's hard, when a project takes many years to get that quite right, but those are all my questions. Thanks.
I just had a question, if you could tell us in layman's terms what this project was originally conceived, at least in large part to make efficiencies at that intersection, and what is the measure of the efficiencies for traffic flow that we're going to realize with these improvements?
Well, I think overall, there's an overall grade for the intersection. And it's usually A through F. I don't know if there's a G yet.
No G.
No G. Several different parameters go into that overall grade. For this intersection and the proposed changes, the current grade right now is an F. VHB had done a projection, 10 years, with the increased traffic flow, it would still be an F. But one of the parameters of that evaluation measures the length of cars, the maximum length of the lane. How many cars are backed up for how many feet? With the project as proposed, it maintains the grade of F, but those queue lengths are shortened. So what that means is you'll be sitting at the light for less time. And it'll get more cars through the intersection than if nothing was done. But it's just, it's like a regular grade, an A is a 90 to 100. F is, I don't know if you give Fs anymore, but they used to be a 50 to a 60 or something like that.
And
Definitely not or a 60.
Yeah.
And if I could just note on the letter grading system, typically, at level service A or B is like in a rural area with traffic is moderate level. Traffic in a downtown area can be anywhere from E to F and very common. And like Dave said, it's a better F, and that's our goal is to.
You sound like one of my kids. What is a better F exactly?
So can I ask a point of clarity,
Yeah.
Chair? So you mentioned a shorter queue. Like, give us an idea, how much, is it a 50% reduction in the queue? Is it a 20% reduction in the queue? Give us something that we can actually understand, because going from an F to an F doesn't really help us understand the impact.
It measured each of the I think, I remember one of them was 1,000 feet, and it might have went to 800. But, each lane had its different queue lengths. Let me pull up.
There was a summary that we did for
By
town
the
meeting.
terms that they grade intersections, we're not realizing any huge improvement in that measure.
You also have to consider that we're looking 10 years down the road as well, so we're adding
Sure,
increase
and
in traffic.
I'm weighting the fact that we're spending an awful lot of money, so yeah, I would think that 10 years down the road, we
Right.
would want to see something improved.
We don't want to be the
I'm
first
sorry, I
change.
lost my internet.
We don't want to be the first G,
Gary,
we won't be a G.
we'll get that.
There is a
okay.
summary that we did, I think, for town meeting in 18, but we looked at a couple things that play into that queue is when there's a pedestrian button, people push the button and get crossed, or cross the intersection, that obviously has an impact on queues. And as part of the two-way separated bike lane, we're doing a bike signal for the bicyclists so that they have their own phase as well. So we did a comparison of kind of what those queues would be.
So, is it just a measure of time through the intersection then?
It's
for
a
the
it's a
grading?
measure of delay, so it's a measure of wait time for vehicles, and there's a measure of the queue. And each lane has a capacity that so much traffic can get processed. And, you know, there's a lot of traffic on this roadway. In order to process all the traffic efficiently, you know, you need 4 lanes, a 4-lane cross-section to get 2 lanes through in each direction, which is something that is a vision that nobody would want to do. So the signals nowadays are a lot more efficient, they're more intelligent, and they have the ability to detect when cues are hitting certain, you know, when cues are, or when we call them, when vehicles are gapping out on something, and it'll turn over more quickly and go to a traffic approach that has more of a delay, and we'll switch over. So if we can find that summary, we can get it to you. I know we prepared it a while ago.
I got it.
So, go ahead.
And again, I would add, Matt was touching on the different signaling. If the F to an F is based on the safest approach to designing that intersection with your exclusive crossings, you know, I mean, the bike will press it, everything will stop, the bike will cross. If you have concurrent signals, which some urban areas do, right? You know, you have certain travel lanes can go when there's pedestrians crossing. Those improvements would, you know, change the level to a D under some of those, and even a B if you really go just you cross more or less without any exclusive stopping of other traffic. So again, the safest approach is you're going to reduce your queues, and for this one it was from through right, went from 1,400 to about 1,073. Main Street westbound through right went from 1,475 to 1,181. So it's 15, 20%.
About 300 feet for each of those.
30%.
So I don't in any way mean to suggest that I'm not supportive when I ask those questions. I think your answer was important, and it was important to me to understand that while we are not necessarily improving our letter grade substantially, we are intentionally getting a lot more traffic, including pedestrians and bicyclists, that we have long said we wanted to be able to accommodate in downtown Hopkinton. We're getting them through that intersection together with the cars, at least as efficiently and more safely. For me, I used to work at the Hopkinton drugstore for many, many years, and it's a huge improvement for me, observationally, that the ADA improvements, that people who need to use that intersection, who don't drive or walk or take bikes necessarily, have to use other kinds of mobility devices and so forth, will be much more safely accommodated as well. I think that's huge. And I do think that anytime you have a project that is as big as it is, it's complicated to try and accommodate a lot of variables and a lot of competing interests. And it is true that anybody who's directly affected is directly affected, and it is in balance with hopefully the greater good. So I appreciate the work that's gone into it. I appreciate you coming tonight. I appreciate everybody doing their piece. Is there anybody from the public who wants to talk on this? Okay. Dave, would you like to make your motion?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion that the planning board approve this project.
Or support this project?
Support this project
As designed?
as designed.
I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but there I go. Is there a second?
I'm good with that.
Second.
Okay. Is there further discussion?
Discussion, since I missed most
Sure.
of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see him come in.
I just kind of came in just now, but I want to kind of proactively voice my support for the motion, so that's where I stand coming in.
You can make your comments. You can take a couple minutes.
So I like, it's like anything in life, there is the ideal, there's the nirvana situation, and there's pretty good. And this is for the betterment of the town, and I think that's my stance and my opinion on the matter, based off of all the input I've heard from everybody in town. So I'm in support of the Main Street Corridor project, and I can't say it any simpler than that.
Okay, thank you. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay?
Any abstentions? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you. And is usually the open invitation for us to come back and give updates to the board. just
Thank you very
through
much.
John.
Appreciate that.
Through the chair, we do need an update on the West Main Street, Lumber Street intersection project at some point.
I'm sorry, what, say that again?
What is it?
It's not within the scope.
It's on our,
Which
we
project?
discuss it anytime.
What is it you,
I'm
I'm sorry.
West Main Street, Lumber Street intersection project.
I would
Yes.
I would call your DPW director, because
It's your desk.
We should, all right, you know what? Let's interface with John and make that happen. Okay?
I don't even know.
Thank
what
you
that
very
is.
much.
Thank you.
Okay. Legacy Farms North Road acceptance. Is there anybody else who's here to speak on this, just by show of hands? Okay.
Roy McDowell from Legacy Farms LLC. I was actually before the selectmen last week, so what I'm going to give you is pretty much what we said there. We've engaged Western Nurseries under contract to do all the landscaping on the North Road this coming spring as early as possible. Hopefully that'll start in very early April. Once they're complete, hopefully before the end of April, we'd like to actually raise all the manholes, do the punch list on the road area, and get the road paved. And then whether it gets approved in December, or whether there's possibly in May, or possibly a special town meeting, if neither one of those happen, our intent is sometime in May to have everything complete.
So is it, well, it would depend on the weather in April, is that correct?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Okay. I was at the public hearing, Roy. Did you, could you update us on the plans and any more that you know about the plans?
Yes, we sent the as-bills that we received, actually, the town received them, I think, 2 years ago, but we resent them again. I sent them to John as well. I know Beta had some comments, DPW had some comments. We've sent all those comments over to VHB, who did the plans in the first place, and they're going through those lists now, and we'll update the plans. Now, the final really can't be done until the final pavement is put in. I mean, they'll probably be, at some point, 99%, but until they actually put that final pavement on, it's going to make a difference of about 1.5 inches.
Did we have an update on the cost to,
We sent the 2 contracts.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. We sent the copy of the contract for the landscaping with Western Nurseries today, and we sent a copy of the contract with Aggregate Industries, so you can see a complete cost structure.
So Beta sent their estimate based on the information that Roy sent over, and it's up on the screen right now. I just got it at the end of the day, so I haven't had a chance to look at it. They factored in the magnitude of construction costs, since if the town were to take it over, they would have to pay prevailing wage, which is not what the developer would have to pay, so it's a little bit more. So they updated those. I believe the work that was in the 2016 letter that Beta wrote,
Yeah.
Phil said pretty much remained the same. So it was really just a recalculation of the costs. So again, haven't really had a chance to go through it or look at it or analyze it, but this is what it
Through the
is.
chair, just a point of clarity, is this the Beta's estimate including the higher labor rates?
Yes, this is the current estimate. So the previous bond that was paid was, I believe, $776,000 and change, and I believe this one is now, what, $789 and change? So it's slightly higher, and that's because the prevailing wages have risen in 3 years.
I will tell you, the cost I believe we sent you today is roughly half of that.
do you have a question?
Well, just looking at our memo here, it says the deadline for the select board to file the layout with the town clerk is December 2nd. Is that going to be able to happen? Or
We've sent you the as-built plans that were done by VHB, and that basically is the layout. It shows where all the utilities are. It's basically everything that Ludlow Construction built, so it shows sewer lines, water lines, manholes, sidewalks, paving, et cetera. The town wants something a little higher level than that for final execution, which we have VHB working on.
It's my understanding that the meets and bounds were missing, and that was what the select board needs to determine the layout, because it's the actual boundaries of the road
Okay.
that they need.
Are the meets and bounds going to be added? No problem?
Yes, yeah. VHB is going to do that.
And do you know the time, what's the timeline for that?
They have not given me a timeline yet. I've still got them working on finishing the traffic lights, which I'll discuss with you next if you'd like.
Cannot wait. Okay. Did we get an update from town council on their recommendation for a way forward on this?
Not as of yet. I will follow up with them tomorrow.
All right. So we're sort of last minuting it for the December 9th pre-special town meeting soiree.
If I may,
What time is, hold on, yes, you may in a second. What time are we meeting before?
6:45.
6:45. Yes, Frank?
I haven't seen the video, but I've seen some comments from Mr. Hurd, Mr. Tedstone, in the newspaper articles. But what is your impression of where we stand with the Board of Selectmen on this project?
With the select board?
Select Board, yes.
So I was actually, I have actually drafted a letter too. Did we have copies of that?
No copies, but it should be in the folder, the shared folder.
Oh, the shared folder. So I drafted a letter that, that I hope that you all will take a peek at before we conclude tonight, and we can send it forward. The top level impression is that I think everybody understands that we are operating outside of the, coloring outside of the lines a little bit here, trying to make something work in an unusual situation with unusual drivers and so forth. I was very appreciative that the select board left their deliberations open. I think it's very clear that we have a almost impossibly tight timeline, and we are trying to do something that hasn't been done this way before and may not be possible to do for this special town meeting. But it does seem that there's wide open thinking and support for problem solving and pragmatic solution finding. People are engaged with the difficulties up there. One of the additional difficulties that I didn't understand before the public hearing was that apparently the police department cannot enforce speed limits up there. So that just sort of rather heightens the investment in figuring out a solution. But the bottom line, you asked me what my impressions were. I think that we're fortunate to be served by people who are open to solution finding, and we all, none of us have, a process in front of us that suits this particular project really neatly at this point in time. I'm hoping that the school department wasn't necessarily there, but they have engaged really proactively as well. So I hope that between us and the conversation on special town meeting floor and the work that Mr. McDowell is hustling to do now positions us to have a go-forward position on something that's safer. So personally, I still say that we probably we had a big ribbon cutting and invited through traffic, and we now understand that we probably should have waited to invite, the flow of traffic off there. The entire town benefits from offloading some of that traffic.
Downtown. Mm-hmm.
So it feels like that there's a real fruitful conversation to be had. There's an opportunity to problem solve and negotiate and do something perhaps a little bit different that makes the most sense in this one-of-a-kind kind of situation. So,
Thank you.
if everybody wants to take a peek at the letter I drafted, because I didn't want to send it before people had a chance to read it. Oh, look at that.
It's right here, too. I want to read your
Look at
writing.
I've already read it. We wrote it.
I think the letter is.
Question for the chair. Did we need some kind of, to give the applicant a waiver to allow them to build it before the completion of the construction?
Yeah, thank you for that. We had talked about that last time, some sort of waiving the process, the subdivision process as it is typically exercised. We did not really look at that for this meeting, right?
That's what we've asked town council to weigh in on, is how to handle that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that that's going to be a game day decision at special town meeting.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not going to hold up what the developer
Yeah,
is doing.
yeah.
Maybe at some point during the summer, we need to address
You know,
that.
I'm not always a fan of really working fast and furious, but I do appreciate the ways that people have stepped up and are trying to find a solution that works for this sticky problem. So, definitely between now and December 9th, stay in communication. If there are things that, you know, need to be resolved between now and special town meeting from your perspective.
I will talk to John offline and to John Westerling.
Perfect. Can I ask the obvious question? If you were asked to increase your bond slightly to cover the new estimate, would that be something you would consider?
I mean, we can look into it. I'm not quite sure whether that's necessary, given the fact that we've shown you the actual contracts that are less than half the amount of money, and the fact that we're doing it in about 4 months, 5 months from now. I'm not quite sure why it's really necessary.
So by asking the question, I'm not suggesting to you that it's necessary or mandatory. I'm just suggesting
We
that
can have a
that-
conversation about that.
Okay.
I motion that we support this letter that Muriel has written.
Any further comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And thank you. And did you want to talk in light?
Did you want an update on the traffic lights?
Sure.
Okay, as you know, we submitted 75% drawings, I think, about 2 months ago, and those were reviewed by the DPW and Beta, and then Beta and the DPW got back with comments on the plans. VHB then got back to Beta. I think they're both on the same page at this point. I'm told VHB will have those drawings done the end of the first week of December, so about 2 weeks from now. And at that point, assuming the town accepts those final plans, we will then put those immediately out to bid so we can get those lights ordered and get them installed.
Through the chair?
Yes.
I was just curious, like, what kind of structures we're going to get. Are we going to get the new modern ones like we have at the top of the hill towards Upton? Or are we going to get...
If I could answer that. In speaking to John Westerling, he said the town has set a new standard with more of the ornamental type fixtures. So rather than just doing the regular, ordinary, plain steel post, we're doing the more ornate fixtures and posts.
My real question is, will they be intelligent lights? So that we don't just sit there if there is no traffic coming the other way? Are they the smart lights?
I believe it's very similar to what we did downtown,
Just-
which is more intelligent
I believe there's
lights.
cameras on the lights to track
Perfect,
traffic.
perfect. I hate to say it, but I almost don't care what a street light looks like. I know that's probably not,
Could we add, I know this is on our ongoing agenda items, could we just add what the deadline is? I know we extended the deadline, and just next time, because now I've forgotten what we extended it to.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Gary, you are up for solar.
All right, so I'm going to give Muriel a little break here. So Borrego, so I'll go ahead and take this hearing for Borrego Solar, so if you guys want to come on up. And while they're coming up, just a quick reminder of where we are for the group. So the outline, we've been through all the detailed discussion. We have voted to grant one waiver, and the Borrego was due to go back to the Conservation Commission for some additional discussion, and I guess that's where we'd like to start, is a summary of where you guys are currently at.
Sure. So we've made some significant progress since we were last here. Our first...
Sorry, really quickly, can you just introduce yourself?
Sure. Matt Swansberg, project developer, Borrego Solar.
And Brandon Smith, civil engineer, Borrego Solar.
So after leaving here, we had a meeting with the ZBA, I believe it was the following week, requesting a waiver to have a portion of our solar array in a floodplain.
An isolated wetland.
Isolated wetland, well, ZBA.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, the ZBA was for the 100-year floodplain.
Yep, and they approved our waiver. Following that, we had a meeting with the Conservation Commission, and they approved our project with an order of conditions.
Yes, the plan that actually submitted to the planning board last Monday, or I think you would have received it on Tuesday, was the plan that was approved by the Conservation Commission that night. Really, the only change between that plan and the plan that you'd seen previously was we just moved out of an isolated wetland in the northern array area to, as per a request by the Conservation Commission, and we increased some soil restoration that the Conservation Commission wanted to see. But other than that, the array area and kind of everything pertaining to the planning board has stayed the same.
It's the same number of arrays in total?
We did lose some, I think, I want to say 9 racks of panels to accommodate that request by the commission.
And just for a point of clarity, how does that impact the 4 megawatt capability of the plan?
I'm not going to do the math in my head and embarrass
Okay,
myself.
let me ask you this, is it still approximately 4 megawatts of power?
Yes.
It's still approximately 4 megawatts.
Yes, that's a fairly small, still, it's a rounding error in the whole scheme of the project, yeah.
Thank you. So the next, actually, I guess 2 questions. So question for John, then. We had an original waiver requested from the Whitehall Brook cross-section, so are you still requesting that waiver?
Yes, basically due to the fact that we're not impacting the array, or the river, and there's really no need, we don't see a need for that cross-section, just because we have pulled away from the river in all areas except for a very small area.
Okay. So really quickly, are there any questions or comments from the board on the updates that we've heard tonight? No. Okay. So then I guess what I'd like to do is, if we close out the waivers, so I will entertain a motion to grant a waiver specific to Appendix B, the Whitehall Brook cross-section.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain?
Aye.
1 abstention. Okay. All right, so hopefully, well, next step for us would be specific to findings. So I'm just going to go ahead and state what I have in my notes based on the previous hearings. So as a planning board, we find that the proposed development located at 0 Wood Street with lots U621-0, U620-0, and U620A, which is a proposed 4 megawatt commercial solar photovoltaic installation. We find that that this application conforms to the provisions of Article 31 in our zoning bylaws. We find that the commercial solar photovoltaic installation will not be detrimental to the neighborhood or the town. And we find that the environmental features of the site and the surrounding areas are protected, and specifically surrounding areas will be protected from the proposed use by provision of adequate surface water drainage. So just to clarify, those are specifically the approval criteria for the commercial solar photovoltaic installations. Are there any additional findings that people want to also include? No, okay, and remind me, John, do we take a vote on the findings, or? No,
Those
we
would be
do not.
part of the
Okay.
decision. So
Okay.
go through the findings, and then go through the conditions, and then make a vote on
Okay,
the decision,
thank you.
including those.
All right. So then with regards to stormwater management and erosion control, also for this project as defined, as described previously, we find that the project complies with the performance standards as set forth in the stormwater regulations, meeting the stormwater management standards of the Massachusetts Stormwater Management Policy. Any other findings from the board?
I don't know if this is the right time to, this topic, but the project started out with the whole question of 61A. And we're going forward with the notion that we are deciding on the project per se without the legal guidance on 61A. Is that still the right approach?
Oh, we have some, or you can.
Go ahead, John.
No, you can.
So there's a process in 61A where when the use or the ownership changes, they have to provide a notification to the town. They're going through the permitting, which doesn't trigger that.
Okay.
So once that is triggered, there has to be notification to the town, and then the town has right of first refusal. So at this point, there's not much we can do until that notification comes about.
Okay, so it's irrelevant to this process right now? whether it's
In a way, obviously,
It's
the
definitely not irrelevant.
Yeah, the elephant in the room is if they get these permits, it makes the land more valuable, which is an issue for the town if they want to purchase it. However, it would be appealed probably immediately. Yeah, it would, I mean, you can't really deny a project on the thinking that the town will then want to purchase the property for a cheaper price. That would be subject to appeal.
Question through the chair?
We still have right of first refusal, yeah, if we approve this, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a provision in 61A, which I didn't realize until we had that meeting with the attorney, that either by sale or by lease, the change of use of the property, at some point, the developer or the owner has to notice the town, and that triggers the 61A process. And then the town has the right to exercise their rights under 61A and has the right of first refusal to buy the property. Part of what we've seen is that because it's a solar farm, it's a use that wouldn't be problematic due to it because of the proximity to the Whitehall Brook and the town wells. The question I had was if it is problematic it's at least important to consider for the town as a whole. It's not our question to answer. This is a select board decision and a town decision to whether or not to exercise the 61A rights. But once the property comes out of the 61A protections, it's not true that if there's a solar farm there for 20 years that doesn't cause us any problem, and then something else comes in, we've changed the use of, the applicable uses of the land, and we no longer have the 61A rights. So I think that this particular parcel, because of its proximity to the Whitehall Brook and to the town wells, at least invites an interesting conversation and question on that, because we don't have any way of exercising those 61A rights 20 years hence, once it's not a solar farm, and it has come out of 61A protections. That's all.
Question through the chair to John. You mentioned in your notes that they will be doing that, though. If you said, I think you used the words will.
They will be doing
They
what?
have to notice the town.
Yes. As part of the 61A process, as soon as it
Yeah.
changes use or gets sold, they have to notify the town. They have to, it's an official state channel that I shouldn't say state channel, it's an official state process that they have to notify the town.
I guess the point I was making is that there's only one shot at the 61A rights, and that's now. So whether or not the use is is something we're comfortable with at this point in time is not necessarily the key question in that conversation.
And through the chair, if I can clarify, I don't believe the whole property is coming out of 61A, just the lease areas for the array. So there is, we're going to assume there's still going to be land under 61A on that property, and so when that land changes, the town would at a later date have a chance, whenever that happens, to get that land as right of first refusal.
Thank you.
It's complicated.
Rob, does that answer your question?
Somewhat, it doesn't, within our process, there's no like, by all of our bylaws and everything, this seems like we have no grounds to deny this, like, from my point of view, I don't feel I have a grounds to deny moving forward on this project.
Here, go ahead.
But there's like these, after it's approved, there's these decisions that are going to be impacted by this prior ruling, so to speak.
So it's like two different things, right? We have our process, and it isn't a reason to deny the permits, in my mind, either. It does affect the Chapter 61A question, but that doesn't matter to our process. It's straight up, a permittable project, or it's not. We have our process. My point was that that within the discussion that will follow for the Chapter 61A process, in this case, in my mind, it's a particularly interesting question.
Chair.
Yes, Jane.
So who
Am I right to
has
respond to that?
authority over the 61A? Is it the select board or is it the planning board?
I'm sorry.
It's my understanding that that's the select board.
It's a select board public hearing, so select board process.
So
They will extend, when they get noticed, there's a particular process, and they will seek input from all town boards and committees as part of that process. And then there is a public hearing whereby after, undertaking
So it really
their
doesn't-
information gathering process, there will be a decision whether or not to exercise the rights. Now, part and parcel of that is, how would we go about paying for that piece of property if we were to exercise
And again, that would be select board.
It would, and that would also be a town meeting vote.
Okay, thank you.
So, and just to summarize, that process doesn't get initiated unless the use of the land is changed or the parcel changes hands. So,
Unless the town is notified that the owner is about to sell the property or change the use.
thank you. Yes,
It's a little complicated thing.
understand. Okay, so we'll move forward with discussion on conditions of approval. And I do unfortunately need to read these so that they are part of the public record. So, and these are in the meeting packet if you want to follow along.
Through the chair, just one point of correction. In the last meeting we had on this, one of the proposed conditions was changed, and I didn't number them, so it's going to be difficult, but it was the applicant shall regularly remove construction trash and disposal debris from the entire construction site. So disposal in front of debris and entire construction in front of site were added, or were recommended to be added by the board.
Okay. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, and I'm going to, I'll take them in chunks, and we can go back and discuss if necessary. So, provide a list of system owners to the planning board upon application for a building permit. Provide a copy of the signed maintenance agreement upon application for building permit or to verify compliance with seating requirements of the approved SWPPP. Complete signed SWPPP shall be provided to the planning board prior to issuance of a building permit. Provide a signed, completed operations and maintenance plan prior to issuance of a building permit. As discussed in the beta review letter and noted on the plans, no fertilizer, pesticides, or herbicides shall be used during construction, operation, and/or maintenance of the project. The Director of Municipal Inspections, the Director of Municipal Inspections inspects project under construction for compliance with the approved special permit. This includes the driveway, roadway, and infrastructure construction shown in the plan. All construction activities shall adhere to applicable local, state, and federal laws and regulations regarding noise, vibration, dust, sediment, and the use of interference with or blocking of town roads. The applicant shall be responsible for mitigating all construction-related impacts, including erosion, siltation, and dust control. The applicant shall regularly remove construction trash and disposal debris from the entire site in accordance with good construction practice and the construction management plan. No tree stumps, demolition material, trash, or debris shall be burned or buried on the site. All exterior lighting within the development project, whether shown in the approved plan set or required by Massachusetts State Building Code, shall be shielded, directed downward, and not upward or outward, and shall not spill onto adjacent property. All fixed mechanical equipment on the site shall be screened from view from the ground. Such screening shall be sufficient in the opinion of the Director of Municipal Inspections. The construction management plan shall be submitted in the planning board prior to the commencement of any site work. The applicant shall also submit a revised full plan set which incorporates all the modifications made during the public hearing process and any required in this decision. Erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be implemented during the construction period in accordance with the approved site plan and the construction management plan. The planning board shall receive a sign-off confirmation that the site contractor and any major subcontractors have received the construction management plan prior to the commencement of any site work. Construction may occur only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday through Friday, and Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. pursuant to Chapter 141, Article 1 of the Town of Hopkinton General Bylaws. The applicant shall submit final as-built plans to the planning board at the completion of construction. The applicant shall submit geotechnical reports confirming that the roads and culverts can accommodate traffic of emergency vehicles, and all approved requirements for the development, including those from the Woodville Historic District Committee, such as certificate of non-applicability, shall be obtained prior to issuance of a building permit. Are there any other conditions that folks would like to include? And as I'm looking at Dave, just a reminder that we did waive the requirement for all utilities to be underground for the one pole that was requested. So.
Thank you.
If I may, the herbicide, one of the first that you read, in an effort to make sure that your conditions don't contradict what the Conservation Commission required us to do, there are some invasive species on site which we have agreed to mitigate, and to do that, we may need to apply herbicide. So would it be possible to amend that condition to say something to the effect of except in to take care of invasive species or something, some verbiage there?
That's a tricky one for me, particularly given the proximity to the well.
It's a no from me.
Are there ways of removing those invasive species without herbicides?
Yes, I believe there are, potentially not as effective, but I guess there are alternatives we can pursue to avoid that.
So just to clarify though, Concom asked you to get rid of the invasive species. They didn't specifically say to use herbicides of some kind to do so. Is that correct?
They didn't request that specifically. That's more just a typical invasive species, the specific species, I think it was Japanese knotweed. That's kind of the suggested method of eradicating them. So that's what we proposed.
Okay. Any thoughts on that request from the members of the board?
I'm in agreement with Mary Ellen that I wouldn't want to see herbicides used. Basically, if you're using it for one species, it's basically, it's everywhere then. It's, so.
I think it's a really uniquely sensitive spot. It feeds our entire aquifer. That's our entire water source for the town, for anybody who's on water. And I would be very reluctant and would need a lot of information that supported the use of herbicides and pesticides.
I'm just saying, you're going to already have construction equipment down there, and if it just is easy to take out front of the loader and take it out.
just going by the guidance for that specific species, that's what's in the guidance, but, in light of, I agree, I can understand being in that proximity of the Whitehall Brook. I think there's a way to satisfy both, both conditions, which would basically be some sort of physical removal, so
Thank
that.
you. I think we have a strong preference to not use herbicides on the site.
We can make that happen.
Okay, so before we close the hearing and take a vote, is there any final public comment on this topic? Okay, so no additional comment. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, the hearing is closed. At this point, I will entertain a motion to approve this solar photovoltaic installation special permit. Thank you, Amy. With the conditions as discussed.
So moved.
Point of clarification, the conditions that were read were for the special permit, not for the stormwater permit.
There's additional conditions and
There were no additional conditions proposed, but you can add some on if you'd like.
Can we vote them together, or we vote two separately?
I would vote them separately.
Separately, okay. So just to restate that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the commercial solar photovoltaic special permit.
Through the chair, if I may?
Yes.
I just wanted to verify with John, have all the principal planner comments been incorporated into the conditions?
They have not. The views have not been addressed, but I believe that might not be an issue.
So right now, there are a few things that John recommended in his comments that we may not have already included, and we need to double check. So one is anticipated views, and at least conditioning that views are, maybe photographs are taken ahead of time, and then afterwards, after construction, to make sure that everything has been properly screened, or that the views haven't been impacted detrimentally, which we thought from the design it's probably not going to be. And I think there was, I'm sorry, I'm just looking through here. Some clarification on the width of Mechanic Street, you were
So
saying?
we mentioned that, and I don't know if there was ever 100% clarification, or if you just said you were looking into it, but I know we discussed it, but you could probably provide that clarification
So,
now.
sorry, we've closed the hearing.
Correct.
So,
That's correct. They can't talk.
Yeah, is there an option, and I, just to make sure that we can address Mary's points, is there an option to reopen the hearing?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. But if I could speak candidly about my own comments, I don't think that is necessarily an issue, that they've redesigned it and the access has been proven by, I believe, fire. And so if that was the concern, so if that's been addressed by fire, then my concern is addressed. And the screening and views, that I don't think it should be an issue, but it's definitely on the planning board to require that as a condition, that they just prove to it, but I don't know, it may have been addressed just through the course of action.
If I recall, we did discuss through the context of the outline, both the emergency access piece as well as the lack of a need for screening because of where the arrays were located and where you could see them from, which was 495.
Yeah.
Of which screening was not a primary concern for us. So it does still need to conform to our bylaws on screening, but I don't think there's my understanding, my interpretation is that there's not a need for anything additional beyond our bylaws.
Understood. Yes, that's fine. And, I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing something from these principal planner comments that, yeah.
Thank you for bringing them up. Okay. Any other comments, questions? All right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve commercial solar photovoltaic special permit as described with the proposed discussion, the proposed conditions that we discussed.
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
One abstention and one
No.
opposed. Okay.
So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4,
6.
That's enough.
Okay.
So you just need the names for the nay and the abstention.
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, Jane, you can't vote.
Oh. Sorry.
So that's 5.
Is it a simple
6.
majority?
It's a 2/3 majority for a special permit.
Okay, so the motion fails.
We'll just stand up in court. It seems like they're not all the requirements of the bylaw.
I
Well, if
can't
you'd like to
comment
know
on
the
that.
reason I voted no, it's because I don't want to approve any of the waivers. I feel that for the solar panels being deployed in Hopkinton, that they require clear cutting of the forests, I think we should hold them to no waivers.
So the waiver is the one utility pole? Is that the one that we had to
There's
grant? Is
two.
there
We
more?
also granted the Whitehall Brook cross-section because they removed those arrays that might have impacted that Whitehall Brook.
So if they remove the arrays that might have impacted Whitehall Brook, do they still need the waiver? I'm sorry, I'm a
It's fine.
tiny bit behind the 8 ball on that one. What's that waiver for? The Whitehall Brook cross-section?
That's a bylaw requirement that we're basically not impacting Whitehall Brook. We're not doing any work within the brook itself. We're not crossing it. So that's why we requested the waiver.
Why would you have to do that if you're not going anywhere near it?
It's in the bylaw for any area within the tributary area. I'm not sure of the exact reason that is called out in your bylaw. We would, I mean, if that is, a huge hangup, we can get a survey crew out there to look at that. I don't think it will have any bearing on the project, but we'd be happy to do that. As for the other waiver, unfortunately, I don't think there's really anything in our power whatsoever to do anything about that. We reduce it down to one pole, which is completely up to the utility and really is as best as we can do.
So if I could, I would like to move that we revisit our vote and open up the discussion. And the only reason I'll make the motion is because I don't think we have a defensible position if we deny this. And I think that we need to work together to try and get to a defensible position on this.
Discussion.
So, sorry, just to
Yeah.
clarify, you're moving that we reopen the public hearing.
Well, at least reconsider the vote.
Reconsider, that's why this is new territory for me. so
Not
I'm
being an attorney, I don't know the process for that, so
We have happily done this before. I think we're in safe territory.
I would, you can move forward and
We could take another vote.
you can take another vote and ask town council after to see if the process was followed and determine it that way.
I just think, so I made the motion, somebody seconded it. Are you comfortable with discussion?
So, I'm sorry, but I
Yeah,
guess I'm
no,
not,
you're fine.
from a discussion perspective, I'm not quite sure what it is you're suggesting. So I guess maybe if you could be a little bit more specific in your motion.
Well, I moved to reconsider the vote. That's straightforward, and it was seconded.
Okay.
So that's straightforward.
And your suggestion.
And then are we at the discussion point?
Yes.
Okay. So never would I suggest that I tell anybody on an independent board how to vote. I just want to make sure we have the full conversation that it is our job to permit or not permit things that are permittable or not permittable. This appears to me, I mean, with all the conditions and my understanding of the regs, this appears to me, whether I like it or not personally, a permittable project. And I don't think that, I know for a fact that if we send this into a litigation situation, all of everybody's good work gets tossed into the breeze, and we don't know how a judge will decide it on our behalf. So we've worked really hard and put a lot of good work into this, and I think that the applicant has worked in good faith and put a lot of good work into this, and it's my opinion that this, that we can come to a place of agreement that this is permittable to this board. So I just want to see if we can work a little bit harder and get to that point. If we can't, we can't, but that's my point.
So
Through the chair, I think we can fast track this, and I think it's definitely a permittable situation. I think we should vote again.
Could we go over, because Dave's not comfortable with the waivers?
Yep.
The waiver allowing it to have one utility connection above ground, I thought
So-
that was to improve the view from the historic district, which I certainly support.
Say it again, Amy.
I'm just going to propose, I think this is more detailed discussion, so I'm going to, let's take a vote on that motion,
I'm reconsidering our previous vote.
considering our previous vote, and then we can, again, I'm not quite sure how to do this because we closed the hearing. So I don't know how we continue discussing.
It's
all in
discussion among the board, we can certainly
Okay.
do that.
So all those in favor of reconsidering our vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay.
So one option would be to revote without the waivers. But I thought I remembered that one of the waivers was to improve how it looked from the historic district, and I hate to I would like to allow that waiver to improve the look from the historic district myself, but if that's the only way we can get it passed.
Just want to make clear, is that an option to vote again without the waivers?
We can revote the waivers too, we'd have to decide to do that.
So, point of order for clarification, the waivers we've already voted on tonight, we're talking about revoting, which are the two that we're mentioning.
There were both, did we both?
One was tonight,
Yeah. But we had voted to grant those waivers.
So
So revoting on the waivers tonight, I'm not sure what that accomplishes because we've already,
Previously, 1 or 2 meetings ago, we voted on waivers.
Yes.
on one waiver. There's two waivers in total. One of them is requiring all utility connections from the commercial solar photovoltaic installation to be underground. And based on a number of inputs, and if you want to go into more detail on that, we voted in support of that waiver. And then the second one that we voted on tonight was waiving the requirement for a cross-section of Whitehall Brook.
So I might be able to clarify it. So, Amy, I really do appreciate you bringing that up to discuss my concerns, but I think I'm fine with it because my concerns are more ethical about saving the forestry, so it's not more about a specific, so it's just something, I believe in.
It's a bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing to do with the specifics
Yeah, I think that we all
of this.
struggle with
Yeah.
trees coming down
Right.
for solar panels to
Right.
pop up.
Right. And I think if we revote, it's going to pass.
Okay. So shall we vote again?
Okay, I just want to make sure that you don't have any trouble with the waiver for that one utility pole that preserves, that would be something you're comfortable with?
No.
That preserves the
No, I'm
historic district?
still opposed to the waivers,
Okay.
but it sounds like you don't need my vote on the revote.
Yeah, so, yeah, I want, I want to make sure that I'm not, twisting any arms here. So I appreciate that, Dave, to be honest with you, and I appreciate your perspective. And in my world, I wouldn't cut down any trees to put up solar panels either. But this doesn't happen to be my choice.
Understood.
Okay. All right.
Conversation or discussion? From our meeting with the town council, I'm going to defer to our chair to make the motion, and I will definitely second the motion. But I believe he said we had to specifically word the motion a specific way. It was, I forget exactly how he said it. We're not just re-voting, we're re-approaching.
Reconsidering. So, we are at the same meeting. In that case, we were going back in time, and we had communicated to a judge, and a judge had communicated back. I think that there was a different dynamic in play. I'm not a lawyer either. So, here's hoping that we're striding forward in the appropriate way.
Go
I
ahead.
think he said something like we have to specifically state that we're following the bylaws of the town in our decision-making, and in this case, we're voting in the affirmative to approve the project. Something like that. I wish I wrote it down.
So I have a question for Dave. Do you have any suggestions on what exactly it is we would revote on here?
So am I wrong that you don't need my vote on this?
No, we do need your vote.
Why? Because Rob said that he would switch. No, but Rob's going to switch, then it'll be 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 1.
Through the chair, Rob abstained.
Rob is the deciding vote.
So, and again, not an attorney, but it could be possible, and you have, I think, moved to reconsider the vote already, so now you would just need to vote, but
We did
it could
already
also
do
be
that.
possible that Rob could request to change his vote.
Okay.
But I think since you've already
Gonna revote it.
reconsidered it, you probably should revote.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion to approve the commercial solar photovoltaic special permit as described in our meeting packet with the proposed conditions as outlined
And with the waivers?
and with the waivers granted.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
So it's 6 to 1? Okay, I just want to make the point
oh.
too, I'm sorry, that very often, just to consider that an abstention really is a no vote, so I learned that lesson the hard way as well, so I just throw that out there for people. And if it's a no, that's fine, vote your vote, but an abstention is de facto a no.
All right, nope, and then secondly, I will also entertain a motion to approve the stormwater management and erosion control plan as described in the packet.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Thank you, guys. Sorry for the
Civics lesson?
Thank you.
learning opportunity for us here. This is a new experience for me, but appreciate your patience.
Thank you, and thanks for working with us and revoting. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
And can I ask just a sort of anecdotal question? Is Zach looking at where solar farms are most desired?
Yes. We, through review of other towns' bylaws, we have determined that some other towns have been successful in putting bylaws in place to say solar farms will only be allowed in certain places. such as, along 485 or in cloverleafs or things like that. And it has not been kicked back by legal, or by the Attorney General. So, which is, completely different than what we have heard in the past. So, so we certainly are looking into that again, and we have asked John to get some more advice from legal counsel, citing these examples. We also wanted to get any input you collectively may have about possible zones that would be, preferable. And I just added to my notes on our work plan the whole bit about tree clear cutting. And again, another legal question, can we restrict it to places that no tree cutting is necessary?
Some measure of minimal.
So I do have some input to that from the state level.
Can I, which I really want to hear.
Yep.
I'm going to recommend that we make an agenda item.
Okay.
And we have a 15 or 20-minute conversation on it.
But this will just take 1 minute.
Which is totally fine, but I just...
Yep, sure.
Go ahead.
So, one of our state representatives is proposing legislature, easy for me to say, legislation, thank you, to give more credits for solar panels that are built on brown areas versus green areas. So
incentivizing people
Yes.
to
Yes.
target
Yes.
non-greened
Yes.
spots,
So that's
which is
something
awesome.
to think about and follow.
I also know anecdotally that I heard from one of our elected assessors that owners or property owners are looking for abatements on these, and it's not necessarily the easy income generator that we would all like to think it is. And whether or not they're getting abatements, I don't know, but I think we all have an expectation that there's taxes coming that is different than previously, and I think that it might be an interesting piece of information to get what the actual experience is here in Hopkinton.
So it was my action item to ask for that to be on the agenda at our next meeting, because I know it was too late for this meeting.
Oh, awesome.
You guys think alike?
Awesome. So December 16th, we're going to have a discussion on input to ZAC for solar installations.
And if you can get any legal advice, further legal advice, based on what the ZAC has been finding out prior to then, that would be great too, because it would contribute to the discussion.
Okay. Our next public hearing is the 27 Lumber Street Hopkinton Tennis Club. Come on forward, please.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Just want to let you know there are 3 hearings. We have an hour or so. Just want to make that.
Just checking my watch on that very thing, John. Thanks so much. Sorry as I am to say this, we do have 3 more hearings, so we're going to try and hold to 20 minutes if we can, and let's make progress.
I think considering the progress on the list we made the last time we came here, that's probably achievable.
Okay.
We'll keep our comments brief.
Just necessary ones. All right, go ahead and catch us up to date, introduce yourselves, and...
I'm Robert Green. I am the project development consultant. I work for Donnie Satterfield, who lives here in Hopkinton, who is the owner of the project.
Louis Labeo, architect of the project.
Jesse Johnson, civil engineer for the project.
Welcome. John, you want to just give us whatever update you might want to give us?
So a bunch of us met with the fire department and the fire safety officers to discuss this project and the code enforcement for the town. I had to leave that meeting early, so I don't know what conclusion anyone came to, and if there was any kind of written approval from the fire department. I have not received it, but I think that can be conditioned. Any approval can be conditioned on receiving that.
So I think that's a very accurate representation of what happened. And, basically, the reason why we had this meeting, which was on Thursday the 21st at the town office for about 2 hours, was to really follow up on the work that has been ongoing between mostly myself and Chief Slayman. So, and again, just to kind of bring everybody up to speed and the recent history, this is related to SP2 in the beta review, which we discussed last time we were here, which requested, for lack of a better term, letters of endorsement, if you will, from the police and the fire department. We produced, were able to successfully interface with the police department and produce that document. And basically what has happened with that recommendation from the beta review with the fire chief is it has pushed the process in an interesting direction. As you say, sometimes it's a learning experience for us. But that stated, and after Thursday's meeting, it became very evident that it has pushed us really into the code review process, which I would respectfully suggest is connected to the planning board, but perhaps more to the building permit process, because Chuck Kalick was at our meeting as well, and anything involving code review on this project, of course, there will be no building permit issued for this project without successful code review process.
So if I remember correctly, having just had the pleasure of watching that, it has to do with the bubble, and that's a unique, is that the problem for the fire chief, your covered?
I'm going to try not to get too deep into this because, again, it was more code review, but I think it's fair to say yes to that. We have to continue to work with the fire department on the code review for the air structures. And there are a couple of things involving traffic flow that we have worked on with them as well. In fact, we just sent Chief Slayman an updated design for that today. And he was very busy, judging by the traffic that went through the West Main Street today. He didn't get back to me. I didn't think he had time to do so. John probably didn't talk to you. We have some ongoing things with regard to code review with the fire aspect of this project. After our meeting on Thursday, which was very productive, I would suggest, everybody worked very well together, very cooperatively and collaboratively, and everybody seemed to agree, including the town's code enforcement officer, Maurice Paulette, and the project's code enforcement officer, Walter Adams, that we were well on our way to resolving a lot of these issues. And there was a lot of creative discussion. And also, my goal for that meeting was to get everybody together in the same room, continue to move this forward, and to really set a list and a target, not a moving target, but a target, so everybody in the room understood what the process would be and what the list was of things that needed to be done to do this the right way and address the safety issues. And I feel that we accomplished that.
Okay. So I think that in my mind, at least, that remains an open item. I know that you would like to leave it for the inspectional services team and have the decision, but I think that it is directly under our purview to have it more tightly resolved than that. Safety is one of the things that we have to consider. So I think that remains an open item, and we should probably move on unless you have any objection to that.
I think you people own that relationship, and the fire chief owns it probably more than we do.
Okay.
So we have a couple of things left on the laundry list.
Okay.
I believe we do.
I see on the agenda, stormwater management is still open. Are there open issues? It's not crossed out in which, I didn't, maybe that was a mistake. Anybody know if there are stormwater management issues open?
I thought we were waiting to hear back from the Concom.
I don't think on stormwater. I could be wrong.
I don't remember anything. I'm just asking the question because it's not crossed out, that's all. All right, so nobody knows of any open issues for stormwater management? All right. Building design and landscaping. Any open questions or concerns or issues? No. Okay, I'm going to check that off. Signage. Any open concerns, questions on signage?
Has Design Review Board commented?
We talked about that at the last meeting, and we did discuss that with the Design Review Board, and part of their conditional approval was, and obviously sensibly so, that when it's time to review the signage, we will go back to them.
There was no change in
signage.
signage from the previous submittal, but obviously there's the condition, as with any sign in town, that we have to go before the DRB in order to get the sign approved.
Okay. So are we comfortable checking that off?
For our purposes, we can cross it off.
Perfect. Solar panels, alternative energy?
We discussed that at the last meeting as well, and we reported that we have 2,000 to 2,400 square feet of roof space available that qualifies for future consideration for the installation of solar panels.
You're not considering it now at the outset?
Not at the moment. We, like to move through the approval process first. And the other thing is, we need to do a little more research on what would work best in terms of whether it would make sense to put the solar to sell it back to the grid or have it be internal to offset energy costs. And these are some things we still need to work on and study.
Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Just a quick comment. I don't know if commercial works any different, but for residential, mine, it applies to your house first, and then everything extra goes back to the grid.
Impacts on schools, other municipal services, and the value of neighboring residential properties. Any questions or concerns or open items? Okay. In fact, I think it's going to be a benefit to the schools. I think I remember hearing that there'll be some,
I did interface with Rich Cormier, who's the new athletic director at the school, and he seems to be very excited about the project. And being that this is a community project, as per the vision of the owner, I expect we'll host the swim team and be beneficial in other ways.
Awesome. We appreciate that. Anything that advances town sports and school connections. Town department and board committee comments not covered above. I kind of tucked that code enforcement open question there. Does that make sense to people? That fire department comment and ongoing work? But is there anything else that's open?
Board of Health, but it couldn't be finalized until the Board of Health issues the permit anyway, right?
Okay, so they have the, yes, they have the.
They have to, their septic system plan expired already, so they have to do a new one.
Oh, right. Do you have that process in place with the Board of Health?
Yes, I've had a number of discussions with the Board of Health agent. We were just honing in on how to calculate the flows properly, and then I have to update my plan, send that to him, and I think we should be good to go. But he told me basically the nuts and bolts of my design look good. We just have to do a couple other things.
So our approval could ensure that the Board of Health's conditions were accommodated. Okay. Walkway. Concerns about the walkway?
I'm just concerned that there wouldn't be one. So, as long as there is one.
I've heard from some neighbors that are very excited about it.
You're talking about the sidewalk?
Yeah, I was wondering
Yeah.
what we're talking about
Is
here.
that
What
where,
about the internal?
I know, what are we talking about?
So tomorrow night, I'm going to meet with Dave, your group. So we are going to have an informal discussion tomorrow night with regard to trails. The other thing we talked about last time we were here was the sidewalk, which, as you know, is a part of the original larger permit, which is conditioned. And we're going to, all of us, and probably the Conservation Commission too, we're all going to revisit that in the future when it comes time to make the final plans for that.
So we crossed that one out previously, the 518.
Crosswalk locations and sidewalks, yes, but wasn't part of the discussion that there would be a sidewalk extension?
Oh, there will be.
Okay.
It was just how long it was going to
The
go.
question was exactly how it's going to be constructed.
All right, so this, go ahead, Dave.
I was just, it is a little confusing to Amy's point. Maybe at 5.1.8, we remove the word sidewalks and we replace it in 14, or something like that, just to separate the two. Because we really are talking about 14, we're talking about a sidewalk.
Okay, and so.
We removed it so much as
So,
checked it off.
Checked it off, yeah. So walkway and trails maybe not apply here.
They're going to be.
Well,
no.
Trails are different.
Trails are
They're coming before the
Thank
Trails
you.
Committee tomorrow night. But as far as walkway, just a little vague, but we don't, I mean, we're all talking sidewalk, I believe.
So
So
We're talking boardwalk?
just,
possibly, it's, what was discussed last time was that there will be a sidewalk
Okay.
along Lumber Street to the point where, Modera, sorry. There'll be some safe place to walk along that quarter mile, half mile,
Yep.
whatever it is. So not on the frontage of, the tennis club's property, but the part that people would actually walk, which is from the tennis club to Modera or back and forth there. The details of it haven't been worked out because there's some issues that we're going to have to
Wetlands
all
and things like
negotiate
that.
with Concom.
I think I
So some of
understand
it
now.
will be, some of it might be walk.
Sidewalks was just brought up, but that's not part of 14 and 15. 14 and 15 are just trails, walkway and trails, not the sidewalk, because that's covered in 8. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, sidewalks I think are different.
Okay.
Yeah. But are we contemplating, and I apologize if I missed this in the conversation before, some walkway or trail that connects to the school property? Is that what?
We're going to look at trails tomorrow with the Trails Committee.
Okay.
And see what the options are. These guys were willing to attend, and that's all, we sent out an invite, and that's pretty much it.
Awesome.
I can give you an update at our next meeting.
Okay. So here's my question. Do people feel comfortable crossing, checking those off, or do we want to leave them open?
Through the chair, one more.
Yeah.
The big thing about sidewalks that we talked about was crossing the street multiple times. Like, it's a quarter mile. Like, the Conservation Commission doesn't want the sidewalk, because there's wetlands right there on the side of the street where Modera, the tennis club is.
Yeah.
It's the current problem. So they talked about having multiple crosses of the street, the sidewalk for a quarter mile, which is impractical and not going to be used. So that's why it's this thing that is still rings in people's mind.
Were we incorrect to close that off, number 8? Should we leave it open?
It's, I don't think any of us have seen a plan of where the sidewalk's gonna be, how it's gonna be laid out. None of us have seen it.
so I would respectfully suggest that this particular issue is, again, part of the master plan for this, and perhaps can be compartmentalized off to the side, as we all, I hope, agree and acknowledge that this is a future action that several parties are going to have to deal with to determine how this is going to be done. But I would respectfully suggest that it's less connected to the actual main body of the project and some of the other things we have talked about and addressed.
Through the chair, I believe the original project had that condition for the sidewalk to cross.
To cross
So
twice.
what we would suggest is keeping that condition with the understanding that everyone wants to resolve the problem in a better way, but that allows the project to move forward rather than hold it back until that can be addressed with all the varying stakeholders.
Okay. I don't want to hold you up either. I just want to say but what is the process for the sidewalk design changing?
As far as I know, because I was the one that chased it the last time, after the last approval,
Yep.
I had 2 meetings, I believe, out in the field with representatives from planning and conservation.
Yep.
And we had some discussion on on landing on maybe with the two crossings, but no one was really thrilled about it. So I think it's going to be the same thing again, as again, walking the site with representatives from the planning board, conservation, figuring out what can be practically done to minimize impact for the wetlands, create the safest, obviously, walkway all on one side for the length. That's really what it's going to come down to. And so it's going to have to take me trying to figure out what we can do construction-wise, how much impact can we in the wetland. And then it's going to take a full notice of intent submission, because we're within their jurisdiction, because we're going to be within buffer zones. And then I'm going to have to work with the DPW. So it's going to be DPW and conservation really after this to go through the sidewalk
I was going to say
design.
that we are essentially out of it.
You'll be out of it, except for the collaboration out in the field of coming with the right design, if you will. But when it comes to the permit itself, it's going to be conservation and DPW.
All right, so the condition you're telling me says that the sidewalk does cross twice.
I don't know, we don't have any specific plans that were in that condition. There was only discussion of a sidewalk will be done. There was no stipulation of the route.
That is my preference.
Yes,
that
it
a
is,
sidewalk
it
will
is
be
open
done.
and generic right now.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. So is the board comfortable with that? I think that there are some challenges to that sidewalk, but there is clearly commitment to put in the sidewalk, which I appreciate. Okay, I think we can leave the sidewalk checked out, thank goodness. Okay, and we'll leave trails open because we still have the code enforcement, and you'll just report back to us? Okay. And
Whatever works for
folks.
you, either way.
Is there a walkway issue of any kind, or can we cross that run right off? I vote to
So you're going to
cross
say,
it
can we
off.
cross
It's
that bridge
crossed
when we
off.
get there?
Is there any new comments or questions or additional information? Any comments from the public? Hi, come on up to the microphone, please.
Sure. Good evening. My name's Bob Graber. I'm president of the Hopkinton Sportsmen's Association. We're in a butter to the property there. The only thing that I wanted to make the board aware of, when this plan was originally approved, there was a letter from our attorney that was addressed to the chairman of the board the director of property management at the time. Excuse me. Can I use this?
Sure.
Elaine Lazarus at the time. And I didn't know whether that original letter, because this had been resubmitted, whether that original letter from our attorney became part of the permanent document, or whether we should submit it again. It related directly to the fact of what Hopkinton Sportsmen's Association is and what it does in its location relative to the proposed tennis and swimming club. And that was, it's not a letter in favor of, it's not a letter against, it's only a matter of stating that Hopkinton Sportsmen's Association exists as an abutter to that location. And that was the only point of it. The letters were sent, returned, receipt requested at the time. I got copies of the ones that I sent, and also to Mr. Satterall. And I can redistribute those if you like, or if you feel that the original ones still are.
You can distribute them to us. I would think that the original decision with the original letter is.
They were submitted when.
It's not being changed.
So the original letter is part of the original filing. This is a new filing, so the original letter is not considered part of this record until it's resubmitted.
Okay, so we might as well receive your letter.
I'm sorry?
We'll receive your letter.
Okay.
Next submission, same one.
Copies here for.
Thank you.
Whoops. Put your feet up. Just want to point out that it's great that you're involved, because we saw you with the solar facility right next to you, right? You came before us as well. Yeah, so it's great that you're involved in these projects. Yeah.
They're on the opposite side of the tennis club on the other side, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. address to your company, okay?
So, is there any objection to making this part of the official record?
No objection.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, you guys. Okay, thank you very much. Anything else, sir?
I'm sorry?
Is there anything else?
No.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I like your choice of best, by the way.
Yes, I think that we have very excellent taste, you and I.
I have one quick comment.
Yes.
As you remember, I contacted you.
Yes.
I received an email from someone interested in the project, and they were asking some very specific questions about the gun club and safety. And this gentleman was kind enough to agree to meet with us, took us on an entire tour of the range. We had a compass and did some rather informal ballistic speculation.
Nice.
And determined that we feel like we can
tennis players
we
would
can
say-
both be good neighbors.
Excellent, that's awesome. I appreciate it. And I appreciate that you're so proactive, because I understand that it probably could be problematic down the road if you weren't as proactive as you are, so.
It is. It involves a number of people. Your police departments use our ranges for qualification. Other departments in the area do. We work with the Cub Scouts. As you know, we do a fishing program for the kids in the town. It's well attended by everybody.
I have been there myself and murdered a few worms, so.
The fish are still there, but the worms are gone.
The worms are gone.
We did stock the ponds, so they were there. And it also tremendously affects what wildlife that you have in town, since we're probably one of the only last remaining really wide open pieces of property that are in the town. And also, we were concerned about, and apparently the Conservation Department is happy with it, and I know this isn't the Conservation Department, but the Belton chemical spill that's underground, we had been concerned about with the digging of the property there, whether it would push that chemical plume in our direction. Since we're a sole source well, we were concerned about that, but apparently hydrogeologists have said that that's absolutely fine, so we shouldn't have a problem with that.
That's correct.
So.
Well, there's a piece of information I didn't have. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I would like to entertain a motion to continue this. I think it's going to be very quick once we continue. Yes?
I would suggest that it may not be as quick as any of us would like. And then here's the reason why. And it's getting into a certain level of detail here that we did discuss briefly at our meeting on Thursday.
Yep.
But it looks to me like Chief Slayman is going to do this by the book, which basically,
We appreciate.
we all appreciate. So what I believe this means is that we are going to have to go before the State Sprinkler Appeals Board to deal with the sprinklers in the air structure. Now, interestingly enough, the town code review consultant, Louis Spillett, also sits as chairman of that board. And he actually was more helpful in this than anybody could possibly imagine, because he provided us with the pathway to actually get what we would need to successfully complete that process, which is case studies and decisions of other appeals that have occurred for air structures, all of which I received from the State Fire Marshal's office, and all of which has been disposed of favorably into the air structures. So our confidence is exceptionally high that we're going to get through that. However, it's time consuming in the sense that we have to prepare our case. We've got to, make sure we get our engineers here from the air structure company. And again, it's a process. And also what has to happen in full transparency is that Chief Slayman actually has to write us a quote-unquote rejection letter so that then we can
Feel it.
apply to the State Board of Appeals. So we are going to attempt to do this. The earliest we can do this is January. Obviously, our preference would be to get some sort of conditional approval from this group, but as I said, you own that relationship. So we've got to get through that.
Could I offer up, similar to what we were just discussing with the sidewalk, there are certain things I think we could compartmentalize. One being, obviously, the fire chief has to be happy with our project. Usually, the fire chief's purview related to planning board reviews is outside, making sure he has proper access for his fire apparatus around the site. He did ask for additional analysis on that, which we have provided him. Maybe if the board does hear directly back on that item, if it's satisfied or has minimal conditions that could be met with a condition approval, and then everything else that's related to building department issues or filing for a building permit, that would be the code, could get tabled for when it goes to the building permit. That way we're just kind of separating the two, because that appeals process could take months and months and months and hold things up for a long time. And it's not typical whatever comes before the planning board.
Yeah, it's unique. The other thing I would ask the planning board is there some kind of code or regulation somewhere that dictates the amount of time the planning board has to dispose of a certain project like ours? Do you have to make a decision one way or the other at within a certain time frame?
In this case, the decision is due 90 days after the close.
Okay, I thought it might be.
So I put it out there to the board. I'm not, you can't move forward without your appeals process.
Well, what we would typically do, because of the air structures, we're going to have a performance-based application of the code as opposed to prescriptive. We can't just go to the code and check off all the tables. So that's going to be a relatively lengthy process. What we are trying to achieve with the meetings that we've done to date is get it to the point where the fire chief has enough confidence that the overall site layout is sufficiently safe, and that the other issues would be addressed at the time of the building permit from his standpoint as well. That would obviously be a conditional approval and would potentially, if for some reason we either don't get the sprinkler variance or we have to adjust any of the siting, would potentially have us come back for an amendment of some type to this special permit. And that's what I think that's what the fire consultant was trying to avoid, being painted into a corner.
So it would be, I'm going to let other people weigh in, but it would be my preference to continue this and see if we can get the fire chief to buy into that plan publicly. And if it's really tightly formulated, I would certainly be open to considering that. It's a little unusual, but we've never done an air structure in Hopkinton that I know of. Anybody have any thoughts or comments?
I agree with you. I'd like to hear the fire chief's comments, and if he can speak with some confidence there's a path forward, then I'm more comfortable, but at this point I'm not.
Yeah, considering he's not here, that's fully understandable.
And then, so we'll continue it to a point in time that you're comfortable with, notwithstanding the fact that we know you have some January timetable that we don't control. So if you want to, what is our December 16th meeting looking like?
The only thing I think we would request is if it's the disposition of this group to continue it, we'd like to have some kind of assurance that we're not going to get caught in this 90-day time warp on a technicality where we have to start any of this over again. If we could avoid that, that would be great.
So this is an ongoing public hearing. You're not going to get trapped in any like double jeopardy with the 90 days. The 90 days clock starts when we close the public hearing.
Not when we continue it.
Not when we continue it.
Okay.
December 16th. Do you want it December 16th or do you want January?
I think we'd have enough to the fire chief that I would suggest we go for the December 16th date.
So currently we have Maspinock Woods, Elmwood Farms, Buckland Leonard, and this if it's continued.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to continue this to December 16th.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you, guys. I'm sorry you're kind of in this tricky spot, but you decided to put up that air bubble.
Three of them.
It's all good.
All right, here we go.
All right.
Make up time.
So 253 Lumber Street earth removal permit, is the applicant here? As he comes forward, just a reminder for everyone, this is a renewal of an existing earth removal permit. So we're hoping to go through this relatively quickly. Welcome, thanks for your patience. If you could just introduce yourself and give us a very quick, succinct overview of your application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Paul Alphen. I'm an attorney from Westford, Massachusetts. I represent the applicant in ESI Realty. They were last issued an earth removal permit for the 16.5 acre parcel of land on Lumber Street by the Milford Line in January of 2018. The permit, which contains a number of conditions, was issued for a 2-year period. The bylaw allows permits to be renewed for a period of 1 year. We submitted an application for renewal of the previously issued permit for the 1-year term. Again, expecting the permit would have the same conditions as the 2018 permit. You have in your record, we have seen a letter from the Board of Health regarding a couple of questions. One of them had to do with facilities on the property. We checked with our client. There are portable facilities on the property serviced weekly by United Site Services. It's scheduled to be picked up on December 2nd because, as you know, the permit expires at the end of November. Well, it doesn't expire. It suspends on the end of November, since the operation cannot commence again until, I believe, April. Am I right? The period of quarry operation shall be from February 15 through November 30 each year. Yep.
Okay.
So we can pick up again on February 15. There was another question regarding the siltation pond that's there. Our client reached out a couple of times to invite somebody from the Board of Health or the Health Department to come over and take a look at the siltation pond. As far as I know, they didn't get over there yet, but they're welcome to take a look at it and make sure that it's operating properly. Again, this would be a great time to do it because we're going to be shut down until February in any event. I have much more that I could share with you regarding the history, but in light of the fact that it's past my dinner time, I will yield to any questions you may have.
Thank you. John, do you want to cover off on the staff report?
So, like Gary said, this is a renewal, so I think it has different criteria that needs to be met since it's not a new permit. And basically that's if the previous tenure of the permit they complied with the permit. And so what I've been kind of going through up here is the letter from Don McAdam, who's the conservation agent, but also serves as the earth removal agent. So as a condition of the permit, the earth removal agent is supposed to go on site prior to the renewal request and just confirm that everything in the permit is being complied with. And that's what this letter is saying. These are some of the pictures that we took. Don, Kobe, and I went out last week. I went over all the conditions that were in the previous permit with the person on site. I think he said he was a foreman, and it seemed like everything was in line with what it needed to be. And they're doing this ahead of time, so the permit that they currently have is not going to expire until January.
It expires in January, but that's during their suspended period of operation. Right. Interesting. Yeah.
And so let's go through what we have in the memo. So Mr. Alphen discussed the Board of Health comments, and I think those are going to be addressed appropriately. The conditions that we've included here are the conditions from the previous permit, so it would just be copying those over. One change being the bond. So the applicant shall post a bond or make a deposit with the town in the amount of $12,000. I added language that basically said unless the bond has expired, the previous bond will just follow through and continue. So they wouldn't have to pay another $12,000. That's the only change to the conditions. And the date of the approval.
Okay.
Also is on there.
So, thank you, John. I'm going to propose that we can very quickly go through this public hearing outline. Are there any particular topics or questions that people have?
I happily remember the first hearing. Yeah. So, and it was pretty straightforward then as well. This is an ongoing, long-standing operation. So I have no questions or concerns, and I'm ready to decide.
Okay. Everyone else okay?
Just a quick question, what do they process there, granite or?
Granite quarry.
Milford Pink.
Milford Pink granite?
Milford Pink granite used in a lot of historical buildings in Washington DC and some other important buildings in New York City. It's not used that often for architectural purposes, sort of because of its rarity and expense, but it's very necessary in the restoration of buildings that were originally constructed with the material.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it's not called Hopkinton Pink, but that's because the town lines changed, as you know, at some point in time.
Okay, so. Yeah, we were going to skip. We're going to skip it. Did you have something you wanted to add to the outline? No. Yeah, no, actually, we just went through the outline.
We went through the whole outline?
We just went through the whole outline, yes. So, unless anybody has any particular comments or things to add, like I said, just trying to keep this moving efficiently.
Department comments not covered, I guess. The Board of Health made new comments. They have new regulations.
Yes, and that's what he was just, I think, commenting on, that they're removing those December 2nd because it's into the construction season, but they are accommodating
exist.
those requests from the Health Department. So. Okay. So at this point, and let me just confirm here, we do not have any waiver requests. So at this point, I think we can state our findings.
Would there be an opportunity for public comment?
Yes, absolutely. Please.
Joe Marcotte, 240 Lumber Street. I'm on the westerly side of Lumber, directly opposite the access road to the quarry. I've been there since '95. No issues with the quarry company, how they conduct their business. They have been good neighbors. My concern is the same one that I voiced the last 2 times. I believe it's in the meeting materials. It's the condition number 3, that the equipment, the vehicles, the crane, the loader, the employee vehicles be screened from the street. Quite frankly, I don't want to sit on my front porch and look through the woods and see the crane, see the loader, see the trucks. So I would just, I guess, urge you to make sure that that is included in your final decision.
I have a clarification question through the chair.
Sure.
I abut on Echo Lake as well, so, and I noticed that I can see the lake, obviously, during the winter, but I can't see it during the summer. Is this screening issue a problem for you year-round, or is it more of a winter issue when the leaves are off the trees?
No, it's year-round.
It is
They
year-round.
mobilize. I think the concerns are the same. They bring their heavy equipment from New Hampshire, park it there, all during the active business season. They want to bring it closer to the street, reduce the chances of vandalism, something going wrong, kids have a little fun out there. My concern is that we're talking about a crane. It's quite large, has to move an awful lot of heavy product. That's a difficult thing to park at the street and then not have a neighbor like myself see the bright yellow crane. So it's any time. The issues are by and large taken care of. I guess, want to reiterate that be included.
And I think that we have plans to include that condition on this renewal.
So then unfortunately, as you know, it's incumbent upon you to ask the town to make sure we enforce it if in fact it's not being adequately acknowledged.
We will.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll keep moving forward as we move into findings. So Therefore, yeah, John, did you have something else? Or are you stretching? Okay. Sorry. Therefore, for the proposed earth removal permit at 253 Lumber Street, which is specific to a granite quarry, we find that the applicant for permit shall have the burden of proving by a preponderance of the credible evidence that the work proposed in the permit application will meet the requirements of this chapter. Then that earth removal permits may be, that the proposed earth removal conforms to the purpose of this chapter. The earth removal operation on the permitted lot will not be injurious or dangerous to the public health or safety, produce noise, dust, or other effects detrimental to the normal use of adjacent property, have a material adverse effect on the health or safety of persons living in the neighborhood or on the use or amenities of adjacent land, that the earth removal activity will not result in traffic conditions on roads in the area of the earth removal activities which will cause unsafe and dangerous conditions, and that the regulations contained in this chapter will be complied with. Are there any other findings that people would like to include? All right, I need to go back to my notes here. Okay. We're going to findings, John? Okay. So we do have a number of conditions here.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Can I recommend, since these are basically the same as the previous permit, they just be carried over with the changes that I mentioned before?
Yes. So those changes would be on condition number 13, which just states that the bond will carry forward. And then number 16, that the duration of the permit shall be on the effective date when this goes through. Other than that, all of the conditions will continue from the original permit with this renewal.
Through the chair? I was just going to ask John, are the Don McLean's, Don McAdams.
American Pie?
Yeah, I know. Were his recommendations for conditions already included in the conditions?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Everyone else is good, I think. Any final public comment? We're good. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, hearing's closed, and at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve the earth removal permit for 253 Lumber Street as described in the packet with the conditions as described in the packet and in the discussion.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience.
See you in a year.
And I want the hearing next time.
Alfred?
Come on forward, Mr. Dunn.
Put a rock in there.
The next public hearing is 22 to 24 Main Street, the shared parking special permit. Hi, how are you tonight? Thanks for your patience.
Not too bad, thanks.
Tell us why you're here.
Oh, so I'm here looking to share car parking at 17 Main Street. It's part of the condition for occupancy, I believe.
Yep.
So Tom Kerry, the owner of 17 Main Street, had agreed at the selectmen meeting to allow me to have customers park there in order for me to comply with the amount needed for capacity.
Right.
So that's why I'm here.
Okay. John.
So this is a special permit for shared parking. There's some questions that I did have for the applicant. They are required to have they're required to have, it's unclear how many spaces they're required to have based on the calculation. They're proposing to have 3 spaces located at the 6 Church Street, 17 Main Street, which is Mr. Carey's property. They are claiming 6 spaces on site, which can include parking spaces directly adjacent to the property on Main Street at the limits of their side lot lines on their side of the street. So given a generous view of that, those are 3 spaces, and I believe there's parking in the back, but it wasn't confirmed in any application as to where those 6 spaces were coming from. So it's an assumption that it's 3 spaces on the street and 3 spaces in the back, but
That's
I think
correct.
we want correct confirmation
And
of that.
that calculation was given by Elaine Lazarus in May when I first looked at the property for parking.
Okay.
So that's 9 spaces. However, the calculations for the seating are for 49 spaces, and talking with Chuck, that 9 spaces would be taken up basically just from the seating, and they're supposed to have parking for the largest shift, or sorry, it's 1 space per every 2 employees on the largest shift, but that can be cut in half. So essentially, they would need 1 space for every 4 employees on the largest shift.
It's different than you know.
It's different than my
I
note?
thought,
It said 1 space per every 2 employees.
yeah.
But so that's what it is in the bylaw.
Okay.
But then for downtown business, you cut that parking requirement in half. So it would basically be 1 space for every 4 employees.
Okay, I
if you
must
did
have
the, yeah, I don't think I specified that in there. So the question is, the 9 spaces, does that include the employee parking spaces, and then is that an issue? If there is another space needed, is that provided for? And then there has not been an agreement provided saying that this agreement is in effect. I told Mr. Dunn that Mr. Carey needs to either be here or an agreement needs to be provided. So that's something that needs to be proved. And there is a requirement for provision of additional spaces as required in section 210-124C2B. And that has not been addressed in the application, so that can be clarified. And then there are comments from Board of Health as well.
Okay. So, how many employees do you have at your
1 me. No. On the largest shift, I will have 4,
4?
including myself, and I will walk to work.
Okay, so that would be, so that's 1 additional space. So that total would be 10?
Correct.
Okay. And you have 3 in front, 3 in back, so you have your 6. Is it possible that you could have 4 across the way?
None were specified. Tom opened the car park to me from 5 p.m. and at weekends. He's not going to designate designated spaces on the lot. I did the calculation with the bylaws that the planning or that the building department gave me, and taking into consideration, because I really don't want to upset any of the tenants that are in there, the people who work there. You know, what I want us to all, you know, share the space if that's possible. And I did the calculation based on the 3 businesses in Church Street and the chiropractor and massage into the front of the building. And if to code, you know, I was to allocate based on the square footage or based on what the code requires, there's still an additional amount of spaces left that are unallocated, so to speak. I think they total 5 or 6. You know, Mr. Carey did this because he wants the business to re-establish in downtown, and he obviously wants to see us reopen, and I guess, you know, I'm very thankful for that. And he stood up at the Board of Selectmen and said, you know, CJ can use the car park. So, you know, my delay in getting the application in, because I know that was, you know, commented on, was because we wanted to appease and meet with the people in there that currently use the businesses and make sure that everybody was happy. And, you know, it's very difficult to keep everybody happy, as we know, but there's been no objections to it. And I think they're quite happy for me to share the space. What we agreed was that we wouldn't designate the spaces as in, these are bittersweet spaces. And that was their only kind of comment. And Tom is, you know, he's trying to keep the peace and trying to give me what I need to move forward in the business. So that's where I'm at with it, you know. And I think there's been no objections from the current tenants. And, you know, technically, if I have 3 spaces to the front of the building, you know, I guess, are they marked as in bittersweet? Because, you know, well and truly, people park anywhere in downtown, and we all know it. And those designated spaces are part of a calculus, I get it, a schedule to allow me to have capacity. But quite frankly, they're not really my spaces. You know, they don't belong to anybody downtown.
Part of a formula, though.
Yeah, it's part of a formula, I get that. And then when we close downtown, they're eliminated. Main Street, you know, when we close Main Street, they're eliminated. So I won't have the criteria then either. So I guess that, but you know, I'm not trying to recreate anything or cause waves. I just want to know, like, I appreciate I have to get them for the quota, but well and truly, next year I'm not going to meet that quota either. None of the businesses downtown are. So, you know, and I guess that's where my confusion came. I thought when Mr. Kerry stood up at the selectmen meeting in May, and he was open to objections, and people objected, and we talked through it, I thought that was the matter finished, you know, and I didn't really realise that we had to go to the planning board, you know.
Okay.
In May, I stepped away from the business for 5 months due to ill health, and I'm still going to have to step away from it in the future. So I just really want to get open as quickly as I can so I can have somebody else run it for me. Unfortunately, I don't know how long it's going to take to get completely well, but I just want to do it really quickly, you know, get open quickly.
Yeah. Oh, we're keeping a good thought for you. We didn't
Thank
know
you.
that. Obviously
Thank you.
didn't know that.
Thank you.
So I have a certain comfort with that conceptually, that, you know, having some plan, some set-aside parking spots that aren't necessarily yours, but are, you know, routinely available at the times that you are open. It seems to make sense to me. Yes.
I thought John did a very good job with the math on this, with the employees of the different businesses. And the math in this report shows that we can accommodate this, I believe, based on one space for 2 employees. And there was like 1 person in massage, 3 people in the chiropractor and so forth. The spaces are kind of tight, but with access to Main Street and access to Church Street, there's different angles to come in and out, so it's not so bad when you're maneuvering your car around. I don't see a problem, especially where we have other parking coming online some point soon, but let's not mention the downtown project taking spaces away. But your question, what you said tonight actually means that not only is there like 18 spaces and they're under that, including all the employees in that building, you're saying they actually require less than that. Is that correct?
Sorry, I don't follow.
Your math in the report says that there's like 18 spaces in that location, correct?
Including across the street.
Oh,
Frank's referring to
yes,
across the street.
I believe so.
And then I added up all the employees and customers' needs, that they'll be using 3 to 6 spaces still is less than 18, which is how many spaces there are, you had said.
Through the chair, can I just make a really, what I think is a simple suggestion? If we could just get in writing from Mr. Carey that you have access to 4 of those parking spots, then it seems to me, at least from my perspective, that addresses any concern here, and we move forward.
What did his letter say?
His letter, yes, his letter already addressed that.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but I really feel like we shouldn't be sending him back to do this again. It says, let's see. A customer, if a bittersweet customer or 5 parks their car while doing business locally, I have no plans to stop it from happening. So basically, he's saying up to 5.
Up to 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That he can accommodate, he and his, you know, his tenants.
And I'm not sure if any of my customers will actually use the space or not, but I have put in a mechanism that we will be using Open Table as a reservation system. When the 6 spaces that are designated to Bittersweet are full, I will create a code or something that they put on their car window and advise them to go to Church Street or to the car park across the street. But I have no idea whether they'll actually do that or not. I just...
Yeah, and I don't, is anybody else doing that? Is that something that we've asked other people to do?
No.
It's proactive.
Yeah. I'm a customer of that chiropractic, so I'm familiar with that parking lot, and it definitely is not occupied in the evenings at all. And legal or not, sometimes when I go to Pontai, I park there because I know it's free, it's open, and, so, and the chiropractic office isn't open, and the office building that occupies other spaces is not open, and so I know it's available, so, yeah.
And there were concerns initially about this, but they've since been, we went and spoke to them, and Tom went to speak with them, and everybody's happy enough. Again, I think they see what's going to happen in the future. There's going to be a problem in the area for parking in general, and I think, as a town, we should take all the available car parking spaces owned by people and open them up to our customers when we have to close Main Street. I'm all for the corridor. I think it's the way forward for the community, but I do feel that it's going to affect business. There's no doubt about it. And, I have commitments to the bank and to the landlord like everybody else, and it does worry me about what's going to happen in the future, but I think that the corridor and the improvements needed are part of we've got to think about the future.
Sorry, Mary, thanks for pointing that out. I had missed that letter, but I'm supportive of this, given that this is documented and that there is a letter.
I kind of love the letter.
So the point of the comment about the letter is that, and I don't mean to make any accusations to Mr. Dunn or anything, but it wasn't signed. It was provided by Mr. Dunn, not by Mr. Carey. And in the requirements of the zoning, it says, before granting the special permit, the planning board shall determine that all spaces associated with the use are within practical walking distance. The planning board may issue the special permit with conditions which may include but not limited to the following: requirement that shared and off-site parking arrangements between property owners be formalized in an instrument that runs with the land and is recorded with the registry of deeds. So it can be a condition, but we just haven't received any kind of agreement signed by Mr. Carey
But it's
or with
our
Mr. Carey
choice
here.
as to whether or not that would be a condition.
Right.
It's not a requirement, right?
True, yes.
I believe that Mr. Carey sent the email to Elaine Lazarus in May when it was requested at the first hearing, but I'm not 100% sure.
I don't have a record of that, so.
But, it's not going to be an issue. Tom will sign a letter if that's what's required to move forward.
Okay, anybody have any, so I think from a standpoint of practicality, the public hearing outline doesn't really apply to this hearing either. So can I ask if people have any questions, concerns, challenges, or more information that they need?
I just agree with Mary. I think we should solve it tonight.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree with you. I'm just going to say that as a condition that we do get just to satisfy the.
Yeah, definitely.
John has advised
The signed letter.
that we do get a signed letter.
I'll make sure that one goes across in the morning.
As a condition for tonight.
Yes, but that we could vote tonight, yes.
Yes, correct.
And through the chair, I am also a customer there. It's definitely walkable to across the street. There's
For
two
heaven's
sidewalks.
sakes, you could park, a long way away and it would be walkable. I just,
Yes.
I work in downtown Boston, hello. If you're within a half a mile,
It's
you're
walkable.
you're clicking your
Get your
heels.
steps in.
Right? I also want to point out, we did get an extensive list of detail from the Board of Health, but most of it doesn't apply. The only thing that does apply is that they provide no comment on the conditions related specifically to the shared and off-site parking. So, the Board of Health has their process that you're going to have to satisfy, but it's not part of the parking issue. Okay, so this is going to go on record as the 2 quickest hearings we have ever had, and I'm kind of excited about it. Okay, so the decision criteria: before granting the special permit, the planning board shall determine that all parking spaces associated with the use are within practical walking distance. Frank has asserted to that, so I'm good. The planning board may issue the special permit with conditions which may include but are not limited to the following. So the condition that we have collectively decided we would like to see you satisfy is that you provide a signed letter from
No problem.
Tom. Is it Tom Carey?
Yeah.
Tom Carey.
Dot the i's, cross the t's.
Yep. And then, so I think that, I think we're good, right? There are no, requested waivers? Is that a serious thing? Okay.
You have to try.
All right, Dave, work with me now.
we can vote on these as a group.
Okay. The environmental analysis as required in the special permit application, item 1F. So I don't think we need an environmental analysis. I'm just going to list the waivers, and please tell me if you have trouble with it. Environmental analysis as required in the special permit application, item 1F. What does that refer to, John?
So in a special permit for parking, it's basically not this small of a situation. It's
Okay.
for a larger situation. So they're kind of taking everything in the bylaws and
Okay.
doing the traffic analysis, environmental analysis, and
So probably it doesn't apply to us.
correct.
Traffic impact and access study, also similar. Specific data indicating peak hours of each use, and a table showing the number of parking spaces required for each use. That would also be a larger venue, a larger parking situation. Professionally prepared plans stamped by a professional engineer, registered architect, or registered landscape architect as required in the special permit application, item 2. Elimination of the review fee of $2,000, reduction of application fee from $1,200 to $500. Okay, I have personally no issues with any of the requested waivers. Anybody else?
No issues.
Oh, this is excellent work, you guys. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the special permit with the single condition that signed letter.
Sure.
Is that right?
There are 3 conditions.
Oh, I'm sorry, where are we?
Those conditions.
Oh, yeah, you know what, I'm looking at them. The applicant shall provide evidence of the arrangement between property owners in a formalized instrument that runs with the land and is recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So, did we decide we didn't necessarily have to do that?
We don't have to.
That's how it's written in the bylaw.
But it says it's proposed, and we can consider that as a condition.
Is that what you said, right?
That's
Or
what you read to us, right?
may include but not limited to.
Yeah.
So,
So you can modify that
include
as
Yeah.
if you don't want it to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds, or you don't want it.
That
So-
part of it.
in this case, I'm comfortable, I think in any case like it, I would be comfortable with just the letter asserting that arrangement is in place between the two property owners. So that would be.
After owners, delete the rest of it.
Okay.
Evidence of the arrangement.
Okay, signed. The special permit shall not be in effect until all other required permits have been issued by the respective boards, commissions, or authorities.
Sure.
Yep. If the off-site parking agreement expires or is revoked and the use at 2224 Main Street no longer conforms to the parking requirements in the zoning bylaw, the applicant shall, within 30 days of receipt of notice of such expiration or revocation, seek other shared parking arrangements so that conformance with parking requirements is maintained. That makes sense to me. So I will entertain a motion to grant the special permit with those 3 conditions, with condition number 1 being amended.
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion?
What kind of pucks are you going to use? Were they cookies or brownies or?
Sorry?
We heard that there'd be a identifier for your.
Yeah, something like that. They're going to be edible, that's for sure.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? So I am personally delighted to hear that you will be back in business, and
Hope so.
we send you our best wishes.
Thanks
for
very much.
full
Thanks
recovery.
for your time. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
I will
Is that
entertain,
worth it?
we didn't close that public hearing. I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and close that public hearing as well.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Did you want to, we already approved the minutes.
You did?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Awesome.